At this time, I'm going to ask the mayor to join me up here at my desk for presentation. The first one is going to be welcoming the newest citizens of Pensacola.
That's great. Good evening. I think all of us know up here, especially our council, myself, and many citizens, since 2000, Pensacola's lost population. So I asked staff earlier this year to create a voluntary annexation program. And I'm happy to say we have 30 residents that have volunteered to annex themselves into the city. So I wanted to recognize them along with council tonight, and we just had some certificates. So the ones that were able to come, I'm just going to call their names out. Miss Sarah Haney. Sarah. How are you? Thank you. It's a big deal. That's how we grow population. So we all want to say thank you. Thank you very much. Miss Linda Landers. We've got 6 on it. That's it. All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Mr. Jim Kehoe. Thank you so much. Mr. Evan Pelz. Safada Ruffin. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. How are you? Thank you so much. Anthony and Berlin White. There's 2 young ladies that I would like to recognize, Sarah Papantonia and Molly Johnson, for their amazing work as all the philanthropy that you've done for AA Dixon and all the volunteers and students that participate in this. This is a big deal. Obviously, your skills to raise money for people that need it, and this is a big deal. And the City Council, myself, I want to personally thank you. I have the good luxury of knowing Sarah, so when she told me about this project for AA Dixon, it was very exciting. So I would like to read this proclamation. Whereas Mayor of the City of Pensacola, it is my privilege to recognize outstanding individuals and projects which benefit our community greatly and which spring from voluntary efforts of citizens in our community. And whereas Gulf Breeze High School students Sarah Papantonio and Molly Johnson raised more than $10,000 to conduct the Kids Unlimited Learning Today, Learning Tomorrow, a 5-day summer camp at AA Dixon Charter School of Excellence. Whereas 40 teen volunteers from Gulf Breeze High School provided more than 60 second to 5th grade AA Dixon students an opportunity to experience summer camp, providing various youth development programs, games, physical activities, and inspirational speakers to help the camp participants acquire the necessary skills to succeed in school and, most importantly, in life. Whereas the leadership skills developed by Sarah Papantonio, Molly Johnson, and other teen volunteers help them see firsthand the benefit their positive contributions made in helping others reach their fullest potential. Now therefore, I, Ashton Hayward, Mayor of the City of Pensacola, do hereby recognize and commend Sarah Papantonio and Molly Johnson for their inspiration, encouragement, and commitment to the summer camp program for the students at A.A. Dixon Charter School of Excellence, and urge the citizens of Pensacola to join with me in expressing our gratitude to these exceptional student leaders and volunteers from Gulf Breeze High School for their community service to build character, develop confidence, and improve the academic and social skills of the summer camp participation at A.A. Dixon Charter School of Excellence. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Pensacola to be affixed this 19th day of July 2012. So would you two young ladies come up here?
I think you just ought to have the whole group go up there.
Yeah, we'll get a picture.
Bill's already. And now Mr. Bill Reynolds is going to present the Employee of the Month.
Thank you, Mr. President. In order to more strongly emphasize the city's commitment to outstanding performance, one employee is recognized as Employee of the Month. Excuse me. Pardon me. The City of Pensacola is proud to recognize Mike Myers as Employee of the Month for July. Mr. Myers. Mike has been employed with Pensacola Energy since August of 1993. In his current position of gas controller, he has become a favorite among Pensacola Energy's field personnel by demonstrating his willingness to go the extra mile. Mike's experience and expertise were put to the test on the weekend of June 9th, 2012. He was assigned to work a 12-hour shift by himself on what would normally be a quiet weekend since Pensacola Energy was closed for regular business. The deluge of rain that hit the Pensacola area was an unpleasant surprise. Another surprise was the number of emergency calls that inundated Pensacola Energy's dispatch office. Mike fielded 80 emergency calls on Saturday and nearly 50 on Sunday. In addition, and this is all within that quote-unquote 12-hour period, if you will. In addition to manning the telephone, he was responsible for calling out and coordinating the emergency response activities of field personnel. Mike demonstrated his professionalism to both the public and to his co-workers during this crisis. His calm demeanor and rational instructions were very reassuring and helpful to the callers reporting emergencies. High-stress situations were made easier for Pensacola Energy's responders as he took extra steps to prepare driving directions, route emergency service orders, and relay gas line and meter locations in order to expedite a response. Because of his outstanding performance during an extraordinary weather event, we are proud to recognize Mike Myers as July's Employee of the Month. Thank you, Mr. Myers, for all your hard work. Thanks, Mike. Each month, we have employees who reach milestones in their careers with the city. These milestones, which are observed at 5-year intervals, are symbols of commitment, hard work, and dedication in serving the people of Pensacola. As we always say, and have said many times here at this podium, employees are the city's most important asset. As part of the city team, they individually and jointly seek ways to improve the quality and efficiency of services to every citizen. Tonight, we have the opportunity to publicly recognize and thank this special group of employees. As I call your names, will you please come forward to receive an award and be recognized by the city? For 15 years of service, Ms. Sherry Morris, Planning Services Administrator. Sherry started her employment with the City of Pensacola on July 28th of 1997. She quickly became the most knowledgeable person around when it came to land use issues. Her can-do attitude and exceptional customer relations, her willingness to lead by example, and her creative problem-solving abilities have distinguished her as a true asset to not only planning services, but to the entire city as well. Thank you, Sherry. And Sherry, just because you've been recognized doesn't mean anybody's going to be any less harsh on you tonight. Mr. William Weeks III, Inspection Service Administrator, Inspection Services. Bill began his career with the city as an inspector, working in the field doing on-site inspections. Due to his diligence and professionalism, he became the city's building official in 2006. Since that time, Bill has strived to work with other departments and staff to make the development, review, and permitting process as customer-friendly and expedient as possible. Despite the reduction in inspection staff, Bill has managed to maintain an exemplary level of customer service. Developers that come from outside the Pensacola area frequently remark at how pleasantly surprised they are by the responsiveness and quick turnaround time of the city's plan review and permitting process. When he's not busy driving the MGs that he loves to collect, Bill drives to have the inspections division leave a positive impression on those who require their services and make him an asset to the city of Pensacola. Thank you, Bill. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, the next portion of the meeting, and thanks for being tolerant of shifting that bit around on the agenda, is open forum. You've got 4 minutes on any topic you want, whether it's germane to the city of Pensacola or not. Oftentimes it's not, but you got 4 minutes, and there's blue cards right down here at the podium or out in the hallway. Just fill those out and give them to the clerk. Right now, Miss Jean Roden. Welcome, Miss Roden.
Good evening, President Hall and council members. Thank you for having me tonight and listening to my petition. My name is Jeannie Roden, and my current address is 601 East Moreno Street, 32503. I am the president of the East Side Neighborhood Association, Improvement Association. I am here this evening in an official capacity on behalf of the association. In February 2004, the City Council adopted the East Side Neighborhood Plan identifying redevelopment activities to be undertaken in the East Side area. In October 2005, the City Council, in 2005, the Council made the East Side Neighborhood Plan officially a part of the Urban Infill and Redevelopment Area Plan and established by an ordinance. The East Side Neighborhood Redevelopment Trust Fund, a six-year project and spending plan for the fiscal year 2007 through 2012 was one of the supporting materials to that ordinance. Over the course of these 6 years, projects have been undertaken and funds have been spent. However, the Eastside community stakeholders have somewhat understanding of what has been accomplished, but no understanding of how much money has been spent and how much money remains in the trust fund. Why is that? Because city staff, while consulting us informally from time to time about these matters, do not have a formal process for sharing decision-making authority regarding Eastside redevelopment with the community. Florida Statute 1632517 dealing with the administration of urban infill and redevelopment plans require, and I quote, "A neighborhood participation process must be developed to provide for the ongoing involvement of stakeholder groups. In implementing the urban infill and redevelopment plan, the neighborhood participation process must include a governance structure whereby the local government shares decision-making authority for implementing the plan. Council members, with the initial 6-year plan ending this fiscal year, this is a good time to take a formal look back to compare accomplishments to date with the action plan contained in Eastside Neighborhood Plan, which is now established, and to develop the next 6-year plan. So this is what we are asking for you. We respectfully request that the City Council set up an Eastside redevelopment board that will allow the ongoing involvement of our stakeholder groups. We would like to have a detailed year-by-year report of all expenditures made by Eastside Redevelopment Trust Fund for its inception through June 30th to 2012. And we would like to have a report of the annual revenues deposited into the Eastside Redevelopment Trust Fund from its inception through June 30, 2012. Who will live in the Eastside with its rich we who live in Eastside with its rich historic connections love our community very much. We want to see it rise from a blighted condition to become once again a safe, attractive, and thriving neighborhood. When we are able to do that, we, Eastside residents, will have the blessings of a quality of life and that many of you enjoy in your neighborhoods. And the city of Pensacola, when the TIF sunsets in 2025, will repeat the benefits of great tax revenue from the increased property values that goes hand in hand with removal of blight. I thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from you in reference to this petition. And I want to thank our President's Council, more importantly, for the support. And I also like to thank the Eastside Neighborhood Association members that came out to support. And I thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Any questions?
Any questions? Ms. Myers?
Yes, I just want to thank you for coming down here and sharing your thoughts. And under new business, I will bring up some of your suggestions.
Thank you so very
And
much.
see if we can't get it on the agenda for the next Committee of the Whole.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Spencer.
I too want to thank the president of this very active neighborhood association for taking the time to make this formal presentation. I know that there are other members in the audience that have been involved in constructing, I think, a very easy to understand request and proposal, and I look forward to, under new business, us being able to further define a timeline regarding the establishment of the policy necessary for recognizing a tax-funded board, and hopefully that can be up and running sooner versus later.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Roden. Ms. Doris, is it Doria or Doris? Doris Hayes. Yeah. And Ms. Hayes, if you'll take the lectern here. There's a little timer there that'll help you out.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, City Council President, Mr. Hall, and to all of the council members. My name is Doris Hayes, and I have a business on 2618 Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. I'm also a property owner and a business owner. But what I'm here today is to ask you all, I know that, well, I'm also with the East Side Neighborhood Improvement Association. And what I'm here to ask you all about the street going on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive, going south, and I know that on Davis Highway going north. And I have witnessed so many people that are driving down going north of Martin Luther King Drive instead of going south. And I'm just trying to see what you guys can do. I know that there has been some talk about you all going to eventually in the future have the street two-lane on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive south and north. So that's what I'm here for, basically, to ask you all, when are you all, is this in the plan in the future that you all are going to do this? And also Davis Highway, that you're going to be, using that street also as a two-lane. Am I right about that? And then I wanted to ask you all too, see, I've been here since '88 from Houston, Texas. And I was wondering, what was the reason that the street was, I've heard people say that the street was already a two-lane way back then, 40 years ago, I guess, if I can recall. But I was wondering what happened that the street changed as a one-way. What happened that it, you made it into a one-way street?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to take a stab on it.
Okay.
I wasn't around for when they made all these streets one way, but in the discussion when we started two-laying, some of our streets one at a time, and sometimes just sections of a street at a time. There was a little bit of the history given, and it was apparently the big thing in urban planning and development to move large numbers of people through neighborhoods. And part of the problem is that it does a very good job of doing that, but it doesn't do a good job of moving people into neighborhoods. And you get kind of a freeway effect that's out there too. So part of your problem is that not only is it the one way and causes some problems if people are going in the opposite direction, but people go down too fast, entirely too fast for a residential neighborhood. And that's been the explanation I've been given. I don't know what the exact timeline is for Davis and Martin Luther King to go back to two-way, but I have heard it discussed. But I'm going to guess it wouldn't be within the next year or two.
Okay. So is that in the plans that you won't use it as a two-way street? I know there's been a lot of talk about it. I know East Side, we came in and talked about that we're against it, doing that, but most of us now, in agreement with going ahead and doing that in the future. I know some of us may not be and some of us are,
Okay.
but because they said it's a neighborhood, but as a business owner, and accidents, I can give you a list of the accidents that have been, especially on Martin Luther King Drive, Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. I saw a vehicle yesterday going north. Instead of going south, he was going north, just like he was driving, usual speeding. But, I'm just trying to keep from, somebody being hurt or killed. And,
Ms.
I
Hayes,
know nobody wants to change, but sometimes change would help save someone's life. That's all I'm talking about.
Well, if you just remain, there's at least 3 people that want to speak to this issue, and I'm going to go to Mr. Reynolds first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to say, we'll certainly take a hard look at it and figure out what is in the plan.
Okay.
And then we can communicate that, and if we can get your contact information.
Well, I have it right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll do that, and then maybe also to the Neighborhood Association President as well, and we'll find out in the next couple of days and get back to you.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
and if you'll just stay there, Mr. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President, and just to shed some light on what has actually happened, a part of that, when they were putting in the interstate, that was how DOT and everybody got together and having access to the interstate, which is that Maxwell or Jordan?
Maxwell.
I think that's Maxwell. So it would be an issue, and as Mr. Reynolds has stated, he will get with staff and make some phone calls and find out what the plan is. But a part of it had to do with the interstate being put right through that neighborhood, and they had to have some access road to the interstate without, I guess, traffic crisscrossing itself. But as Mr. Reynolds has indicated, they will look at it and talk to DOT and see if it can be converted. I don't know if they can do both of the streets or one of them, but it gets to be a problem when you're getting up to Fairfield and the way those two streets come down. So that will require some heavy DOT involvement.
Well, I'm saying, is that you finished? I'm talking about from Texas to all the way, down to downtown.
Yeah, but if it ran up if it came up to Tahar, and then the traffic is coming in a different direction, you'd have to change that upper part, which is in the county.
Right.
Because you couldn't have, if the traffic came to Tahar and MLK, it couldn't dead end right there, because you have oncoming traffic coming from the north heading south. So as Mr. Reynolds has indicated, they'll look at it and see what DOT has to say, and the county, because there's some involvement there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Myers?
I'm going to pass. I was just
Okay.
going to echo what Councilman Gerald said.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Okay,
And someone will
thank
be in
you.
touch with you.
Okay, and can I say one more thing? I don't know if my time is out, but we need more sidewalks, on both sides. I never came to a city that doesn't have sidewalks, on both sides of the street, in the city of Pensacola. I know some areas, some communities have sidewalks, but some doesn't. So I just wish you all can look into that also. And thank you so much. And I appreciate that sign that going when I'm coming north off the interstate. I can see where you all have that big sign say exit Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. That's my time. Thank y'all so much for giving me this time. God bless you. Continue.
Ms. Laura McKnight. Hi, Ms. McKnight. How are you?
Thank you, President Hall and members of the council. It's nice to see you all this evening. My name is Laura McKnight. I live at 4200 Langley Avenue. I'm a resident of the Scenic Heights neighborhood, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the Council of Neighborhood Association Presidents of Pensacola. We had a great weekend this weekend. Many of our members attended the Florida Neighborhoods Conference that Helen Gibson put on for us and did a wonderful job with that. And we were really inspired by the keynote speaker, Peter Kageyama, and his message of engaging citizens by engaging their emotions. We all love our cities, and so he was talking about some neat ideas as far as connecting with city residents and inspiring them to find the love in their cities. So I wanted to share that message with you very quickly. But the reason that I'm here this evening is I wanted to give you a brief neighborhoods update following our last Council of Neighborhood Association Presidents meeting on Tuesday. CNAP, the Council of Neighborhood Association Presidents of Pensacola, represents over 25 member neighborhoods that account for thousands of residents in the city of Pensacola. And we were kind of disappointed that CNAP was not consulted about the needs of the neighborhoods during the budget preparation process. In June, CNAP polled its member neighborhoods on what their most pressing needs and concerns were. And I'd like to share those with you. It's quite a list, but I want to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that our neighborhoods are facing. In Parker Circle, their top concerns were traffic calming, sidewalks, and stormwater issues on Burgess Road, park improvements, which included funding neighborhood grants, grass cutting and edging, street lights on Joy Street and around the park, and the use of the tree fund to put trees in the park. In Pine Glades neighborhood, their issues were code enforcement. They felt the speed limit was too high and noise violations. Woodland Heights would like more streetlights. East Hill would like safe pedestrian access and traffic calming. East Side neighborhood said they had a poorly maintained property at the intersection of Davis and Gonzales that has been a cause of concern for quite some time. They also indicated that they had code issues, noise violations, and abandoned homes in their neighborhood. East Pensacola Heights wants us to continue to have PCIP grant funding, ! Old East Hill had issues with abandoned properties and want to discuss installing a park under the highway. Scenic Heights neighborhood has a traffic issue and would like to develop a neighborhood-wide traffic plan with a focus on pedestrian safety, increase sidewalks and crosswalks, maintenance and improvements to our parks, including the PCIP grant funding, and had code enforcement issues regarding abandoned homes, property maintenance, and issues with rental units in our neighborhood. The Northeast neighborhood requests additional sidewalks connecting pedestrians to school, community centers, improvements and maintenance to city parks, assistance in recruiting new members and promoting the association in abandoned and neglected homes. Then North Hill had some suggestions to fund the city park plan, so there's a green, pleasant, traffic-safe pedestrian corridor linking neighborhoods north of Cervantes to downtown. They'd like to resume the free downtown trolley and loop in North Hill, Belmont, Long Hollow, Old East Hill on event nights such as hot glass cold beer, Wahoo games, and gallery nights. They want to keep garbage pickup, recycling, and trash yard service as is, do not reduce the level of services. And finally, they suggested that we consider charter schools within the city limits to provide better public education opportunities for city residents and to avoid folks moving into the suburbs in pursuit of better education. And I have these lists available that I'll give to y'all to keep if you're interested. CNAP will be present at the council budget workshops next week, as we have taken this list and come up with our top 3 priorities as an association. But we appreciate your time this evening.
And please remain there. Ms. Myers?
Yes, I want to thank you for coming down here. I would like a copy of the list. I know I've gotten several emails from you I haven't had a chance to look at, so maybe you've already sent it to me. I am the president of the Parker Circle Neighborhood Association, just for purposes of disclosure. But I'm looking forward to having your input from the CNAP. Represents citizens from all over the city of Pensacola, and it deserves to be recognized because of the number of citizens they represent, which is most of the citizens in the city of Pensacola. So I'm looking forward to having you at the budget workshop and having the input from the CNAP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Deweese.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd also like to thank Ms. McKnight for coming and for spending the extra time to not only be a part of your neighborhood, but to bring this group together. And I know that you are on the right track. Actually, the government finance guidelines talk about, in a perfect world, the budget process is truly citizen-driven, and it starts with lists from neighborhoods. Our lives happen in our neighborhoods. All of our city services we count on when we step out of the front door. So that list should be the basis for the budget process, and I'm proud that y'all have put that together, and hopefully it can be considered in that manner next year, and I look forward to you coming to the budget this year and how we can integrate these things. So I'm just proud of everyone's efforts, and I'm glad you came tonight.
Thank you.
Dr. Wu.
I just wanted to thank Ms. McKnight for a fine job she does, and she was too modest to mention she gave a presentation at this conference. Thank you for your good work.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McKnight.
Thank you.
Gary Sansing.
Gary Sansing, 1517 East Jackson, citizen of the city and county. This is what public forum is about. And thank you, talking about each issue. It's wonderful to see citizens here. For years, the citizens have been ignored. Special interests has spoken for, well, 30 years at least. Now we're getting the citizens out because government hasn't worked. It's unbelievable. When I talk about the Glass-Steagall bill, that also did away with consumer affair and practically shut off citizens' right to speak. I'm glad we got an attorney back here who's a civil rights person. Now, my issues haven't changed. For this group, it's the right to speak. The right to speak not only before your council, but any committee you set up. When you get a judge up there says you don't have the right to speak, that's unbelievable. Yeah, let me chill out a second. When you get information from Washington, New York, Wall Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, it's pretty much dictated by K Street or Madison Avenue. So all we've been getting for the last roughly 30 years, I'd say since Eisenhower, is practically nothing but disinformation. Now, I did want to thank you people for a few things, for putting up Occupied Pensacola. Now, it might have been hijacked, but it was originally let you know what the hell, excuse me, but that you have a right to say that, I think, to what is happening. Every day you're hearing about another scandal coming out of New York, Washington, London. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And again, the president has said we have a right to be angry. Now, when you people, I do have a little more time, thank you. Oh, again, I like what you said. We can say any topic. And that's why citizens are going to start to show up, because their services hasn't been, well, they've been reduced. They're not satisfactory. Driving today, I see manholes or covers that up potholes. And if you can't pick up the phone and call the department, hey, I got a manhole out here that needs to be some attention, the citizen should have that right. If there's a fire hydrant blowing out, you should be able to call the fire department and say something. It's the right to speak, the right to represent ourselves. And we, I just hear it all the time. Anyway, I do thank you. Oh, I think now I also like the way citizens can get an answer from here. You people are representing us. And if you don't have an answer, you say, hey, go to city manager or get their department head to give the citizens an answer. I'll try and be back. I might go home and watch it on TV. I haven't eaten all day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nathan Monk.
Hi, guys. I came here tonight because I had the impression that I might be able to address the mayor. That seems to have not been the case, so I'll pass the message on to his avatar. Either way,
Now, Reverend Monk,
yes.
that's uncalled for, name calling like that.
That's not a name. I wasn't name calling. I'm not name calling. Avatar simply means someone who is acting in lieu of someone else.
Okay. Please continue.
Thank you. That being said, my concern with the rebranding is this. I feel like, I'm sorry, lost my place here. I'll try this again another day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Walter Wallace.
Good evening, Councilman. My name is Walter Wallace. I live at 709 Woodland Drive, president of the Neighborhood Association, also a member of CNAP. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is the Florida Neighborhood Conference that was held in Pensacola over the weekend. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Florida Neighborhood Conference, but it's a neighborhood association all over the state of Florida and city officials that deal with neighborhood issues. We had a big conference here. We had a good attendance. And I want to thank Councilman Spencer, Myers, Pratt, and Dr. Wood, those that attended. But I most especially want to thank, and I think we need to get accolades to our city staff, especially to Ms. Helen Gibson and her staff, and the staff of the county, Ciara, Clara, Robert, and all those people, and the Councilman Gene Valentino, Councilman Ray Young, for all their attendance. But the main thing I want the council to be aware of, that the Florida Neighborhood Conference is a integral conference organization trying to improve things in the neighborhood. And for those that did not get a chance to attend, I would most certainly, you get with the city staff that are there, and those Councilman Spencer and Myers and those people that are there, to try to get some insight into what other cities are doing for their neighborhoods. And one thing that astonished me is that a lot of people that attend the conference were sent there by the city. And another thing that astonished me about the conference was the amount of city involvement of city officials that deal with neighborhood issues and neighborhood concerns. And another thing that got my attention too about the conference was this, that some cities, they're talking about economic development, but they're putting their more lost efforts and having city staff correlate with neighborhood association to improve neighborhood association, to help neighborhood association implement programs. I don't even know where you're aware of, August the 2nd is National Neighborhood Night Out. And we never had anything here in Pensacola of that. But these are the kind of ideals and things that come with these conferences, and I want the council to try to get involved, because I was astonished how many cities have their neighborhood association, the neighborhood service department, or the neighborhood have a liaison that coordinate and be with the neighborhood association constantly, communicating with them, helping them to drive and implement programs and to come together to improve the city. So I want the council really think seriously about putting something in the budget for the neighborhood service department can really service and coordinate with the neighborhood, and we have CNAP, which is a good vehicle for the city to connect with the neighborhood. And we need to try to put it in the budget. These cities are having it in the budget. No, there's no hearsay, and I really was astonished. I met people that deal with Section 8 housing, these housing projects. I was astonished they're there, but they say they're putting people in the neighborhood, so they have to be a part of the neighborhood association. They let the neighborhood association know what they're doing, but they're driven by the city. The city put them in the budget. The city has someone that liaison with the neighborhood association. So I think the city, when you do your budget, you need to think about the neighborhood association. Thank you.
Okay, please stay up there, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I certainly agree with everything that has been said, and I certainly want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Helen Gibson.
Sure was.
And Helen, if you could stand up, please.
Helen did everybody great. If it wasn't for her, Pensacola would have never been recognized.
Helen did a tremendous job in the Neighborhoods Conference, and to put a finer point on what you're saying, that's actually Helen's role. Helen is the chief of neighborhoods, and Her role is to go out there and liaison with the neighborhood associations, and it is a position that was added last year, I believe. It will continue to be part of the budget, and we will continue to put that focus on relationships, not only between the city and the neighborhood associations, but doing everything we can to, for lack of a better term, cross-pollinating the particular neighborhood associations as well.
Well, I just want to ask Mr. Reynolds, I think there got to be a little bit more effort. I understand, and I myself, when I deal with city staff been cut. And some of these people are doing 3 or 4 jobs. So this is what I'm saying. Even when we put it in the budget, have somebody part-time to work with the neighborhood association. Because city staff is stretched. Most city staffs are stretched because you know for yourself, y'all been eliminating jobs, so somebody got to take the slack up. So there's no reason for, you can ease in the budget, maybe put a part-time person to liaison with the neighborhood association.
Okay, Ms. Myers?
Yes, I want to thank you for your words of wisdom and encouragement. I attended the conference, and I really got a lot out of it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend every workshop. I'm proud to say that I attended the workshop that Laura McKnight conducted on social media and fundraising with a purpose. And I was in that workshop with you, and you did a good job in your play acting. I learned some skills watching you. But I do want to recognize Helen Gibson did an extraordinary job of organizing this event and bringing it together, and the rest of the city staff, and also the county staff and officials that participated. And I want to thank Ms. Gibson for the work she did with the county. It was a great joint effort, and a lot of the credit goes to Ms. Gibson and the city staff, and you have my great admiration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. There's the regular meeting of June 14th, 2012, and the special meeting on June 28th, 2012. And we can approve both of these with one vote.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please vote. Ms. Myers?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's vote again. Thanks. Okay.
She's pressed it.
You did?
I watched her.
Okay.
Okay.
Did it come on?
We may have to go back to the color-coded
That
system.
board's fine.
The board on the right's fine.
Oh, I've got you. All right, thank you. And that passes unanimously. And for the record, all 9 council members are here. Madam Clerk, do we have any public hearings?
No, sir.
And do we have any quasi-judicial hearings?
Yes, item 7A is a quasi-judicial hearing to consider request for conditional use approval, mobile restaurant unit development, al fresco.
Okay, thank you. Council, before we begin the hearing, let me briefly explain what a quasi-judicial hearing is and the process we are about to follow. Normally, the city sits as a legislative body. We vote upon the adoption of ordinances and resolutions, we determine the city's financial requirements, and we take other actions in support of our municipal government. However, on occasion, we become a quasi-judicial body where the members of council sit as judges of a particular situation. We will hear from an applicant who is asking for our decision on a specific issue, and we must determine whether our laws and ordinances will permit us to grant the applicant's request or whether we must deny it. And very much like judges presiding over a case in court, we must confine our decisions to the facts that will be presented to us today and the applicable law that will apply to those facts. A quasi-judicial hearing requires us to follow a procedure that provides all concerned with due process of law. If the matter is opposed or contested by anyone with a significant interest in it, we must allow for the cross-examination of witnesses in the presentation of rebuttal evidence. So as I open this hearing, it is appropriate for me to inquire of the city staff whether they are aware of any opposition or contest to the applicant's request for a decision. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. And at this point, if Ms. Morris could come forward.
Thank you, Mr. City Administrator, Council President, members of council. We have had citizens contest the issue at past meetings. I've not been contacted directly, nor has any member of my staff been contacted directly as far as contesting this particular hearing.
Okay, thank you. Well, since this evening's hearing does not involve an objection or a contest from any other party, we can dispense with the formalities of receiving testimony, cross-examination of witnesses, and rebuttal evidence. But it is necessary for us to receive the appropriate evidence into the record before we vote on the application of the matter before us. Will you please summarize and present into evidence into the record at this time, please?
Certainly, Mr. Council President, members of council, and I apologize, members of the audience, I don't believe that the screen is working, so you aren't going to be able to see that behind council, but I believe you are able to see it before you. We have a request before you tonight for conditional use approval for Al Fresco, which is located at the southwest intersection of Main and Palafox, is where the property is located. The applicant, excuse me, the applicant brought this forward to staff previously, and it was determined that there was not an existing process in our land development code that allowed for them to seek approval for this type of use. So what incurred was the applicant requested that the land development code be amended to allow for this type of restaurant use, which would be a mobile restaurant unit. In February of this year, Planning Board reviewed the proposed land development code amendment and recommended unanimously approval of that amendment that would create a conditional use approval process for mobile restaurant units. In March of 2012, the Planning Board reviewed the actual development plan and conditional use request for this specific proposal of Al Fresco, and they recommended unanimously again approval of the request subject to the approval of council of the LDC amendment, which was going before council later that month. I would enter into the record the March minutes of that planning board meeting, which I believe was conducted on March 13th of this year, at which time they did review the Al Fresco proposal for compliance with conditional use provisions that were subsequently incorporated into the land development code. They found it to be in compliance. In March, later in March of that same year, this year, City Council approved the LDC amendment, which created the conditional use process under which the applicant has submitted this request. And in April of this year, the ordinance was adopted on second reading. The applicant subsequently submitted this request, which, as I said, was reviewed and unanimously recommended for approval by your planning board. Staff has also reviewed it, and it meets all the criteria that were adopted into the land development code under your conditional use provisions. The infrastructure details that were submitted by the applicant, they intend to install, and these are not requirements necessarily that were put into the land development code, but they have put all of these into their submittal. They have underground utilities to each restaurant. They have indoor restrooms at the adjacent restaurant land use, which will be fully accessible for the Al Fresco patrons. They're going to have architectural compatible details incorporated into all the hardscape, including panels that will conceal the back of the house surfaces. They will have sewer and grease traps, screened dumpster areas, and an irrigation system. And the delay, I wanted to add, between the planning board approval of this development plan and this coming before you was the applicant waiting on the required restaurant tenant. That was part of the conditional use approval process that was added to your land development code, that there needed to be a restaurant tenant that the mobile restaurant facilities would be an accessory use to. The applicant has submitted a lease that was included with your agenda packages indicating that they do have that required restaurant tenant now on board, and they were ready to move forward. The architectural details for al fresco, they intend to have 14 uplit mature 20-inch palms, urban containerized planting with drip irrigation, brick pavers, metal tree grates, suspended lighting within the palm tree grove, architectural fencing and screens, and they are going to use consistent silver air streams for visual appeal and singular identity of the mobile restaurant units. There are some renderings of al fresco and the site plan that was submitted to your planning board for approval. And there's an additional architectural rendering. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Morse, for that presentation. And I had a quick question. I noticed here that they're talked about dumpster relocation. Could you tell me exactly where that is on the site?
They relocated it previously. There was an area here where the dumpster access would be received. They relocated it because they bought a new parcel that is off of Cedar Street, I believe. So that will be accessed from that location. It's not actually on this site, but the requirement in the code was that it be within a certain distance, and it meets that requirement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, could you go back to the infrastructure details slide? Okay. Number 2 says indoor restrooms fully accessible. Does that mean ADA accessible?
Councilwoman Myers, the restrooms will be in conjunction with the restaurant use that will be adjacent, and those would be required to be accessible, handicap accessible and accessible to the patrons of al fresco. That was part of the requirement for an adjacent operating restaurant to be the primary use and this to be the accessory, is that the mobile restaurant units would be able to have their patrons enjoy access to the fully operational and accessible restroom facilities of an operating restaurant.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just wondering, you pointed out that the Land Development Code requires that they have the lease for the regular restaurant adjacent, but there's no requirement at this point that they have leases on the al fresco trailers at this point, and we don't know that they have them.
Councilwoman Pratt, no, the requirement in the code was that there be a primary principal restaurant use that the mobile restaurant development would submit to be an accessory use to. So as long as that was put in place, we don't require that the actual mobile restaurant units have lease agreements, or that we have that submitted to us in order to move forward with this approval.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And our discussion brought up a question. If the primary lease for that restaurant, if that restaurant was to fail or close, obviously you have to have that restaurant space available for the al fresco trailers. Is there language of how long they can remain in place, unused, if there is a lease negotiation going on the primary location?
Councilwoman DeWeese, it would default to our grandfathering language in the Land Development Code, as long as if by chance the primary restaurant use were to go out of business, as long as it wasn't technically abandoned. If they were still seeking a new tenant for that principal restaurant use, then the accessory use would be considered to be part of that grandfathering. But as soon as the principal restaurant use were clearly abandoned, if they were no longer seeking a restaurant tenant, or if another type of retail moved in, then that accessory use would be non-compliant.
So if it was to close, you cannot have the al fresco. The restrooms are required, and the grease, whatever.
Correct. The restaurant would need to be at least accessible for the restaurant, or for the restrooms to be accessible to the patrons of al fresco. If the restaurant use were ever abandoned to a degree where, as I said, another, like a retail or an office or something clearly that wasn't a restaurant use were to move in, then that would be a non-compliant accessory use to those type of uses.
And it would all have to be removed at that point.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. Mr. Spencer.
I would like to speak after all other council members have.
Well, you're the last one that's indicated.
Okay. I will need to abstain from voting on what is before us due to conflict. Our firm, S&P Architecture, is the architect of record of this project.
Okay, and thank you for that. Okay. Is the applicant or the applicant's representative here?
I believe Mr. Carroll was.
Yes, I just need to have you come down briefly to this lectern. Welcome, sir. Just state your name for the record.
Michael Caro.
Okay. Do you have any additional evidence that you'd like to present at this time?
No, but I'm open for questions.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Carroll? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you.
Thanks.
Don't go too far, though. Okay. Council, do you have any more questions of staff or the applicant before we deliberate? Okay. Now I need a motion and a second to approve the matter before us.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have proper motion and second. Please vote. Okay, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Yes, with Mr. Spencer abstaining. Mr. Reynolds, Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, it's my pleasure to ask Mr. Al Garza and Mr. Derek Owens to come forward for a special announcement for the City Council. Gentlemen, if you would, please.
Members of council, Mr. Reynolds, Derek Owens and myself had the privilege of attending the annual Stormwater Conference in Fort Myers earlier this year. And at that time, the city was presented the Excellence in Design Award for the state for the Admiral Mason Stormwater Project. Technically, it's on par with any other stormwater project. It's got all the elements. It's a dual system. But what set it apart from other applicants is the social economic impact that this project had. We partnered with the PEDC on the tech campus on making that project possible. It was designed in a way that it blended with the Veterans Memorial Park, and it's become a gathering point for the city down in the downtown waterfront area. So on behalf of the city, the mayor, and the city council, we both had the privilege of receiving this award earlier this month, and we'd like to present it to the council at this time.
This was the top project in the state, and it's something we certainly should be proud of.
Recent aerial overview and the marquee project.
Mr. Reynolds, if I could add something.
Thank you for both of you guys' roles in that.
And if Mr. Owens could have the opportunity to make a few brief remarks.
I would like to just take a second to thank the Florida Stormwater Association for facilitating this program. As Mr. Reynolds said, this is the most prestigious award that you can receive in the state for a stormwater project. There's many applicants. I sit on that board, the executive committee, and it's a tough decision. Projects from all over the state come through, and there's some really great projects. And to be awarded the top Engineering Excellence Award is a tremendous achievement. I'd like to thank the consultants that were involved, Atkins, Faber and Associates. Councilman Spencer participated somewhat in the design review of the process. Jerry Pate Design was involved in it, and a list of others of a little bit smaller nature. But it just goes to show you how teamwork and dedicated effort can produce a project like that. For those of you who aren't aware of the history of the project, it's come up before. It had come up a couple times in the past as a project to facilitate different projects, developments in that area. And For some reason or other, didn't make it through. But on this last effort, it did because of the teamwork, and it was a great accomplishment. And we want to just present that and thank you.
Thank you both very much. And now at this time, Mr. Barker will come and give his financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, Council President, members of City Council. The full June report will be planned to come to the council at the August meeting, but the monthly recap of where we are at the end of June, I'm going to go over now briefly with you. As council is aware, we made an adjustment, the council did, to the budget with a resolution reducing the general fund budget and other revenues and making expenditure adjustments last month. These allocations that you're seeing here and percentages that you see here are based on after those reductions in the budget. So basically you can see the franchise fees and public service taxes, the half-cent sales tax and communication services tax, and the municipal revenue sharing are all down somewhat still from the adjusted budget. In total, that is $75,000 that we're looking at for the 1 month after the adjustments were made. And I still anticipate that we will have savings in the general fund expenditure side in order to make those a balanced budget at the end of the fiscal year. The local option sales tax is down 1.6%. There were no adjustments made to that on the last resolution. The local option sales tax is down about 1.5%. And your tree planting trust fund balance is $674,000, and the park purchases trust fund balance is $38,068. And of course, we're still working with the unions on the pension issue. The ASME agreement has been voted on by the union, and the fire union agreement has been TA'd but not voted on at this point. The contract and expenditures I'll go over now. Schindler Elevator Corp. This is the second year the extension of that. It was a 5-year maintenance contract. This is the second year of that, and it was for $40,167. Atkins North America for Port Gate relocation design services was $66,000. James Hutto, a contract to him for Bayview Park Picnic Pavilion renovations for $41,867. John H. Carter Company Incorporated for gas regulators for the ESP Gate Station number 2. It was a sole source for $29,758. And Stewart C. Irby Company Incorporated for port dock shore power project equipment in the amount of $45,875. Wallace Sprinkler and Supply, another contract let for $28,950 for emergency repairs at Main Street after the flooding we had earlier last month. And then Gulf Coast Environmental for $51,460 for city park mowing and landscaping in Quadrant 3. Gulf Coast Environmental for city park mowing and landscaping in Quadrant 4 for $57,308, and One Source Lawn Service for city park mowing and landscaping for Quadrant 2 for $67,274. One Source Lawn Service in Quadrant 1 for $64,618, and Kelson Electric Company Port Dock Shore project improvements for $29,060. And then just to remind council, next week we do have the budget workshops that will begin on the 23rd, 24th, and if necessary, be on the 25th. And the public hearings, the first one's set for September 5th, and the second one for September 12th. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions? Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just noticed 2 different costs for the port, the shore power. Does that complete that project as far as funding, or Where is that?
I'm not sure. I can get that information for you. I'll have to check with the department director.
I just know that there have been some interested folks in having shore power, so thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Vice President, that project is still on schedule to be finished by August, the end of August.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Gerald, Councilman Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just one quick question for Mr. Barker. And I was looking at the decrease in the local option gas tax. Can you explain what happened? Is it because of the low prices in gas, or just what sort of happened there? Because now I notice they're going back up. So it's a little game that's going on.
That's correct. The local option gas tax is not a percentage. It is a cent that we get off of that. So it's so it has to be the numbers of gallons that are used are going down, that are being used and distributed.
But you would sort of think if gasoline was cheaper, people would be buying more, and those numbers would have gone in the opposite direction.
I never anticipate the
Okay.
uses of gasoline and what people use that for and that type of thing. I just can report what the numbers are showing.
Okay. I was just curious what was going on, if it's cheaper and we're buying more. And then, but anyway, thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. This is actually a tack on a little bit about the port and the power issue there. A very quick question. Will that stop the generator use at the port for the boats there, the ships that we have there, the tankers? Because I know that we all shared an email there about concerns about that ongoing generator use there.
Thank you for that question, Councilman Johnson. It will stop the necessity for having ships run on their own power. So they can actually just plug right into the shore power, and then there will not be a requirement for them to do that.
Okay, thank you. It kind of it's off the budget, but that kind of jolted my memory. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. That concludes your report. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, council communications. Mr. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things. I want the citizens to be aware that on July 28th, there will be a mayor's neighborhood cleanup, which is scheduled for District 5. Those of you who are watching or in the audience, if you have not received a card indicating that your neighborhood is involved, I encourage you to call 311, listen to the menu, and select sanitation to find out if your street is on that list, because you'll need to get the things that you would like to dispose of to the curb in a timely manner. So if you did not get one of these cards, please feel free to give me a call or call 311, listen to the menu, and then select sanitation and find out if your street is actually in the mix. That date again is July 28, 2012. In addition to that activity that will be happening in District 5, Mr. Wallace left a little prematurely, but I wanted to mention that there will be a neighborhood association meeting. The signs are out in the Woodland Heights area. In addition to the Woodland Heights meeting, which will be Monday, there is also a meeting Saturday morning at Macedonia Baptist Church at 11 o'clock, and that'll be the Northeast Neighborhood Association. I will say this in a bold fashion, that attendance at these meetings is very poor. And it appears to me that residents would prefer to skip the meeting, wait until decisions are made about the neighborhood, and then they want to begin the discussion. I encourage people to pay attention to when these meetings are being held and participate in the meeting. It's kind of after the fact, after a vote has been taken in these meetings and actions are slated, and then we want to talk about the why. Please participate and attend these meetings when the notices are sent out, or if you have questions about when and where they are, feel free to give me a call. But I want you to know that I attend most of these meetings, and I'll say it to your faces and to your ears, that your attendance needs to be improved. We want that participation on the front end, not on the back end. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I just wanted to share with council and the citizens here tonight and also that are watching on TV, two of the special guests that the U.S. Department of State is hosting. You know, we are one of 30 cities in the country that is a host to the International Visitors Program as part of citizen diplomacy. And we had a group from South America today that is studying cultural tourism and the heritage tourism. And also, we are one of 5 cities that are able to host Iraqi students. I believe this is our 3rd year of hosting a group. I think there's 12 that are here. I spent the morning with them having a mock city council meeting, and I found it very interesting to explain to them not only our purpose as a government, but our processes in the purest sense. I actually took the book for Robert's Rules, took our budget in brief, and was able to share information. Councilman Geralds will be happy to hear we deliberated on one topic of curfew in Dogwood City, and it passed. Very good debate, but they'll be out and around town over the next week. They have student host families that they stay with. They are doing service projects in our community. They are doing journalism efforts and actually taping different pieces on their opinions about things and learning how to express themselves. So it was a very productive afternoon. If you see them, do reach out and say hello. Thank you.
Thank you, and you know, I just want to compliment you on all the work you've been doing in the last couple of years with this. It seems like you've even stepped the tempo up. If I come down here to City Hall early in the morning and I see Ms. DeWeese's vehicle out there, I think, oh, well, we've got another group of visitors here. And sure enough, I can come in this back door and Ms. DeWeese and oftentimes her husband are right there with a group of students. I just wanted to, you know, do a little doff to you there. And
well, thank you, and I think it's because of our beautiful city as well. The word gets back to Washington, D.C., and people ask to come to Pensacola. Right. So even the interpreters go back with a smile on their face. They're so pleased to become honorary citizens. Everyone that comes through here gets honorary citizenship. And as I said before, one of the most important things for them is the blue card that's up there. And we talk about the sacred 4 minutes that anyone has. And I often share the Occupy Pensacola effort because that's protesting federal issues that we can't have actually an effect on, but it actually has changed things because of the Manna Food Bank presentation. And Occupy took on a volunteer project to improve the lives of people in our community. So everyone leaves here as an honorary citizen and proud to have come. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to just talk a few minutes about the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was passed on July the 26th, 1990, and July the 26th it will be 22 years old. And it is the most important civil rights legislation ever passed on behalf of persons with disabilities. And I had the honor today to run into one of my heroes, and that's one of our Supreme Court judges, Justice Fred Lewis. And when I met him again this afternoon, I really thought about why I ran for city council, and it's because I wanted to make a difference. But Chief Justice Lewis, he was the Chief Justice 5 years ago. The justices rotate being Chief Justice every year. And the justices, when they become the Chief Judge of the Florida Supreme Court, they take on a project. And Justice Lewis, when he was the Chief Judge, his project was that he wanted every single courthouse in the state of Florida, every building that services our judicial system, to be completely ADA compliant, so that there would always be access for persons with disabilities. There had been some U.S. Supreme Court lawsuits involving access to courts by people with disabilities. And this was an extraordinary effort to organize teams of people to go out and survey every single courthouse in the state of Florida and every judicial building that's used for our court system. When you survey a building, and I was on the team that surveyed the Blanchard building, our courthouse across the street, and it is extremely tedious because you have a survey that's about an inch thick, and you have to survey every single door. You have to measure the amount of pressure it takes to open the door. You have to survey every single element, the podiums, the jury box, the witness box, every element, all of the signage, every bathroom, every building in minute detail has to be surveyed for compliance with the Florida Building Code, Chapter 11, and the Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Design. So Chief Justice Lewis coordinated, or had coordinated, directed that the court administrator in Tallahassee coordinate the statewide effort. So when you go to a courthouse now, you will find that all of our courthouses meet the ADA accessibility guidelines. And I also wanted to bring up another public servant, and that's Bob Kerrigan. He went to bat for a disabled man who had been selected as a jury foreman but could not get into the jury section because it wasn't ADA accessible. So he took that on as a cause, and as a result, the county of Okaloosa had to build a new courthouse that is ADA accessible. And I bring this up because I think all of the council members here have taken on projects and continue to take on projects, not for themselves, but because we truly want to help our constituents and to help the city as a whole in a very unselfish way. I think that's one reason we all ran for the positions that we're in, and I feel that I have, and I know the others have, taken advantage of being at this place at this time through destiny, fate, whatever, to help in some way to better the lives of our citizens. And so I just wanted to share with you, I just felt compelled to share with you some of my role models. As an attorney, I think that our system should be fair, and that the courthouses and all of our facilities should be accessible for all people, regardless of race, creed, disability, religion, or whatever. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just wanted to respond to some comments Dr. Wu made Monday about lunch at our meeting Monday. I've taken upon myself to contact a couple of District 4 businesses, that being Jerry's Drive-In and Giorgio's Pizza, so that we'll have some food Monday and Tuesday at our budget workshops. Jimmy and Pam Halstead have stepped forward there at beautiful Jerry's Drive-In on Cervantes to offer cheeseburgers and French fries for the council. So when you see those guys, please pat them on the back and thank you. They employ about 25 people there at Jerry's Drive-In, and been a very successful business for a number of years. And then on Tuesday, I'm pleased to announce that we'll also have Giorgio's from Mr. Carl Hickson is going to provide pizzas for us on Tuesday. So Dr. Wu brought up an issue that we sit here at these long meetings, 6, 7, 8 hours, and with no food, and we have to eat out of a vending machine. And so I took it upon myself to contact a couple of District 4 businesses, and they're happy to donate food to this City Council before you. And just wanted to thank them, the Halsteads and Mr. Hickson, publicly for donating that food to us so that we can all enjoy and not have to eat out of a vending machine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing that. You might recontact Jerry's Drive-In and ask them to prepare a veggie burger and fat-free pita chips for Mr. Spencer.
Well, you know, I know they have salads there, so maybe we at least can get them a grilled chicken salad. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Dr. Wu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Several speakers mentioned earlier about the state neighborhood conference being here. It's awfully difficult to get a state conference to Pensacola. That one really showcased Pensacola, and when everybody was congratulating Helen Gibson, I was remiss in not doing as well. I noticed she had many staff members. I didn't see all of them, but I know Derek Carlson was there, Al Gosler was there, Chris Johnson, along with many, many others. But Helen Gibson really did an exceptionally fine job in making Pensacola look really good. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Are there any petitions?
No, sir.
Okay. At our July 16th meeting, which was this past Monday, all the items that were unanimously voted upon in the committee of the whole were placed on the consent agenda. What's your pleasure, council?
Move the approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and I'm going to hold items K and L. Are there any other items you'd like to withhold?
I would like to withhold item C and E.
C and D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, C and D, okay. Mr. Weiss?
You can clear my light.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
B and P is in Paul. Not pizza, P is in Paul. P is in.
Okay. Well, so much for having a consent agenda. Okay. So council will be voting on item A, E, F, G, H, I, J, M, N, and O. Ms. Myers?
Yes, I asked that E be pulled.
Oh, E. Okay, I thought you said C and D.
C and E.
Oh, and E, okay. All right. Okay, so we'll be voting on all the items that I said before, except substitute E is being withheld and D is back on the list. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item B, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I was informed today, I had talked to a gentleman that was on the Parks and Rec Board, Mr. Wesley Pate. He turned in his resignation yesterday. I just want to make this board aware that I was informed that there is at least one vacancy, as many as 3 vacancy on that Park and Recs board. And I just wanted to make them aware. I'm encouraging all, we talk about minority representation on these boards, and I'm encouraging all out in our city, our fair city that are watching tonight to step forward and to allow yourself to serve the city of Pensacola. It appears that we have at least one, as many as 3 spots on that Park and Recs board. So I'll be supporting this tonight, but please come forward. We need applicants and people willing to serve their city, and minorities are welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also support this. I just had a question about the previous slate. That was the purpose for expanding this board. If they would, the motion I thought originally was made would automatically be accepted with this expansion. Is that the case? And then there would be 1 extra seat available, or what is our process going forward?
My understanding is those were seated and that we wanted to add another 2. So.
Well, we had to expand, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We had to expand the Parks and Rec Board to allow for those 2, so that there would not actually be nominations, so that if this Mr. Pate has resigned, this would give us 1 more seat. I just wanted to verify that, because it's not part of this motion and action that we're taking.
Madam Clerk, where do we stand on that?
My recollection was Councilmember Gerald's made the motion to expand the board to have 2 more members to accommodate the 2 minority nominees that did not make it on at that time. So if it's the council's pleasure to add those 2, we can do that and send out nomination memos for the 3rd position.
Okay, so we need to then actually amend this motion to include those 2 members.
My light? Is my light working?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was not made an original part of the motion. However, I was waiting until it was fully approved before saying that because I had asked that we include those 2 very talented and qualified individuals. But I was sort of waiting until we affirmatively approved it. And then the procedure, I guess, would be to notify those 2 individuals to make sure that they're still interested. And even though if one person has resigned, I think it would be a good idea to go ahead and add those because we would meet 2 of the criteria that we're concerned about, and one is race, the other is gender.
Okay.
So that'll get this is a great opportunity to make that move, and then we can move forward.
Okay. Well, if you choose to do so now or a little bit later, maybe amend this motion and to include those.
Well, I don't know if it would be necessary to put that part in the motion because once we expand the board, then it would be done.
Okay, gotcha.
So we would have the number that we're seeking. So to not put that in as a part of the motion, to add those people that, were willing to serve and that we had been nominated, if we would just go ahead and approve item B, and then we would direct staff or whoever is responsible to contact those people, and then we can make them an official part. I noticed what was going on when I noticed that they were having a swearing in earlier one day this week. So if we take care of item B, then we can get those 2 people. If they're still interested and willing to serve the city of Pensacola, we can add them to the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Wu?
Yes, I wanted to thank Councilman Johnson for his remarks earlier, and I believe Councilman Gerald just mentioned it. For anybody looking in, when we expand this and we say minorities, we're also including women. So any women that may have an interest in serving this position, please keep this in mind for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Myers, clear Mr. Gerald's slide, please.
Thank you. This motion is to amend the ordinance. That's it. I mean, we can't
You're right.
put anybody's name in here
Yeah.
or anything. This is to amend the ordinance. This is what this motion is.
You're absolutely right.
But after this is approved, and I think it won't be final until after a second reading.
That's right.
Then we can, it would be appropriate at that time to include the 2 applicants that were here at that time.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Anyone else? Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Ms. Myers, item E.
Yes, I wasn't present for the vote on E. Oh, no, it's C. C is, I asked that.
I'm sorry, C, yes.
Thank you. The reason I'm bringing up the action we took regarding the audit selection issue is because I got an email from a citizen who believes that we were unable to take the action we took, which is basically we rejected the recommendations of the Audit Selection Committee and decided to go ahead and hire Saltmarsh for another year and put together a proper audit selection committee that complies with Florida law. And I've handed all of you the section of Florida law which it appears to me we may have been in violation of. And of course we got a legal opinion today from Mr. Messer, But I want to point out to you what it says, and then in light of this, I would like for Mr. Messer to give his opinion. The way I read this statute, if you will look at the second page, item A, on the second page is the item you need to look at. Just flip your statute over, and you'll see that I've put a check mark there by, this is, for the record, Florida Statute 218, TAC 391, at paren 4, paren A. And it says, if compensation is not one of the factors established pursuant to paragraph 3A and not used to evaluate firms pursuant to paragraph 3E, the governing body shall negotiate a contract with the firm ranked first. Now, had compensation been part of the ranking, then under this statute, we could have done what we did. We could have been given a list of applicants and made a decision. But the way I read this, if compensation is not a factor in ranking a firm, then you have to take the first ranked firm because it uses the word shall. Now, compensation was not a factor in the selection of the auditor. That's my understanding. In fact, I don't think the bids have even been opened yet. So the Audit Selection Committee would not have known what these companies, the bid is in terms of price. So the way I read this is that we have to go with the first ranked company, which would have been the company that the Audit Selection Committee recommended to us. Now, having said that, I'm now going to ask Mr. Messer to weigh in on this because, I mean, he's already sent you all a legal opinion, but in light of this part of the statute, where do we stand?
Mr. Attorney.
Mr. President, Councilwoman, let me see if I can do a better job than I did in the email. And the point of departure is going to be the last paragraph of my email to council that contained my legal opinion. When I said the quoted statute was never in play because the process never proceeded far enough to trigger the requirement that council select any firm. In other words, there is no ranking for council to consider because it never made it out of the committee of the whole. And the real question is, why didn't it make it out of the committee of the whole? It didn't make it out of the committee of the whole because council at committee of the whole didn't reject the ranking, it rejected the process. Why did it reject the process? It rejected the process because it heard the testimony of, I believe it was the folks from Saltmarsh, as well as some other testimony, and found that the ranking system itself was inherently discriminatory for all sorts of reasons, and therefore simply rejected the entire committee report, which had the effect of eliminating any of the rankings. It's as though now the committee report doesn't exist. And my opinion was that was appropriate for the governing body. I always, the rule is never to use analogies because we always flounder, but try to think of it this way in its most simplistic terms. Let's say that the evidence was that the ranking committee considered race, sex, and physical disability, and the conversation centered around the fact that they weren't going to select any firm that had people with those characteristics. And when in fact the second-ranked firm had those characteristics, the first-ranked firm didn't, and they presented their recommendations at the committee of the whole. And you know, the argument from the other side is that council blindly has to accept that and ignore any flaws in the system that are significant enough to skew the rankings. You know, my position is no, that part of the responsibility of the governing body is not only to examine the rankings, but determine if the whole process is fair. In my opinion, the council correctly decided at the committee of the whole that the entire process was flawed and just refused to go forward with it. And so where we are today is where we are today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I wanted to address this concern as well. I didn't become aware of it until today because we couldn't get into our email or something yesterday, but this is my concern. I just want to make sure that we're in order as a council based on state statute. And the legal opinion, I want to read that into the record so the citizens understand what was addressed. Because the concern was that we did not have the luxury of moving on to the second in place, as Councilwoman Myers had stated, as part of state statute. So the opinion that was given was, upon review of the audio videotape, as well as my personal recollection, I am of the opinion that council heard an appropriately made objection to the ranking process, which was properly entertained and disposed of by simply rejecting the entire recommendation of the committee. Phrased another way, council does not have to blindly accept rankings that have any type of discriminatory basis. Council President correctly identified the process as sloppy. However, in view of the manner in which the rankings were made, the only rational recourse for council was to reject the entire rankings, continue the employment of the current auditor in order to meet the requirements of the CAFR, and start the process all over with a new RFP at the appropriate time. And then what Mr. Messer had stated, the quoted statute was never in play because the process never proceeded far enough to trigger the requirement that council select any firm. That's where my concern is, because I understand the commentary that we've heard from Mr. Messer at this point, but the action that we were asked to take is item number 6, Committee of the Whole. The recommendation and the action that we voted on was that City Council affirm the final ranking recommendation of the Audit Committee, and that contract be negotiated, that begin with the top-ranked firm, Warren Averett LLC, Warren Averett O'Sullivan Creel Division, Pensacola, Florida. So if in fact we were to address a process, the recommendation from Council President should have been to address the process, and we could have taken action on that at that point. And I would just like clarification, since we obviously took action on the final ranking and it failed, is that are we protected as a council if this were challenged in court? Because I don't see under this statute the remedy that has been discussed by Mr. Messer or that recommendation that we can simply just reject the process. I understand that from the same email that was sent from the citizen, that the process that Saltmarsh went through in opposition to the decision and their protest letter was addressed by our audit committee, and they rejected that letter, and then they made their final recommendation. So although this has had a terrible black cloud over it, they went and finished their process, and I'm concerned that we as a council took action on the final ranking recommendation, not on the process, and that is what's going against state statute. So before we take action tonight and expose ourselves as council or individually, I'd like to hear where that remedy was derived that Mr. Messer quoted us today.
Mr. Messer.
And if I could just have some clarification, what remedy are we?
You stated that we simply rejected the entire recommendation of the committee. Is that a standard legal process that you're addressing? Because we're having to comply with state statute for this audit selection process. So I can't find in this statute where that remedy of rejecting the committee's recommendation actually lives.
Right, okay, I understand now, thank you. Yeah, what I'm saying, the statute's not in play. It doesn't matter what the statute says because we never got far enough to trigger the statute. The remedy, it was in essence rejecting all the bids, which can be done through the purchasing process. In other words, would be discriminatory to reject one bid, but in essence, this council has the power to reject all the bids, which is what you did. And you know, to get hung up on the technical language, you know, there's a theory in the law that you don't exalt form over substance. So, you know, we can talk about the technical language all day long, that's the form, but the substance of what happened comports with the administrative and legal requirements of the law. And you know, people can disagree with that if they want, and that's fine. And you know, council's free to reject my advice, and that's fine too. But I don't know that I can say it any better. As far as any guarantees that we won't be sued, I think I've got my brothers and sisters from Occupy Pensacola. You know, we never expected to be sued from them, and we were. It's I can't tell you what your exposure is. I believe your exposure is minimal because there's been no violation of the law, because there was no law to violate.
So then I just want to be clear, there's nothing in the state statute that addresses how we took action. This is simply us, based on the recommendation for the final ranking from the audit committee, we just rejected the whole thing. I don't want us to be exposed for having taken action for something other than what Mr. Messer addressed. I just want that to be clear.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I'm confident that you can rely on my advice. I mean, and people talk about, I think the title of the email was, you violated state law again. And as humbly as I can, as I look around, I don't see any of my clients in jail since I've been here. So apparently I'm doing a fair job of keeping us straight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you recall Monday, I raised the issue about the process, and I think during our deliberation, our comments, it was pretty well finalized that we did have some real glitches in that particular process. But with that being said, I think we could argue effectively that we did in fact have a ranking process, and the ranking and rating process determined the number one firm. And in actuality, the number one firm did not, was not referred by the audit committee. The so-called voting, after they had the tie, they did two ranking and rating scenarios, and Saltmarsh came out number one. The next process was not a ranking and rating process. It was just who want to vote for this one, who want to vote for that one, which I don't characterize that as a rating and ranking process. So I feel comfortable that what we did Monday will stand the test. And I concur with council that we did the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. I was going to just not say anything about this, but I just want to thank Mr. Messer publicly for keeping me out of jail. Thank you.
Okay. I guess that looks like that ends discussion unless there's somebody from the audience that wants. Ms. Myers.
Well, I just wanted to say that I did have a problem in that I never could put my finger on how they came up with the way they came up with it. Because, you know, Saltmarsh said that they were penalized because of their longevity, that was taken into consideration. There's some evidence that did happen. However, other people on the audit committee say that it didn't happen. So, but I never could determine what tilted the vote by the audit committee to the company they selected. So I do think that the process, it appeared to me, was at least not understandable. So that's the reason I voted the way that I did.
Okay, thank you. Having no other lights indicating desire to speak, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Mr. Johnson's absent for the vote. Item E, tentative millage rate fiscal year 2013. Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't present for that vote. I had just stepped out. But this is my problem. I am not going to support this. For one thing, we haven't had budget discussions yet. And I have been trying for years, not me, but a lot of people, to get improvements on Burgess Road, safe route to school for our children and the people who have to use Burgess Road. And I'm just wondering if it would be possible, if we went up a little bit on the millage rate, if we could get enough money to do the improvements on Burgess Road and earmark that increase specifically for that project. So that's why I'm not going to vote at this time to keep the millage rate where it is. Now, I will tell you that people say you're not popular if you vote to increase taxes. Well, I don't believe that, and I'll tell you why. When people know where their money's going, they will support it if they believe in the project. That's how we have gotten LOST funds, millions of dollars in LOST funds. The citizens voted for an extra tax, and that tax has been used for capital projects. Unfortunately, not much of it has been used in District 2. But I'm saying that a small increase, I don't know, I haven't talked to Mr. Barker about this, but that's why I'm not going to support it tonight, because I would like for council to think about just a small increase if we could get the money to improve Burgess Road so that children will have a safe route to school. That also would include correcting the stormwater deficiencies, which are pretty much eroded, in order to put at least sidewalks on one side of the street. So that's why I'm not going to support it tonight, and I would ask council to reconsider.
Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for Ms. Morris. Yes, Ms. Morris. What street is the school on that's on Burgess Road?
Okay.
Or does it go off of Burgess, or is the school itself on Burgess Road?
No, we're talking about Holmes and Workman. Those two schools are within a mile. If you start at Holmes and you go down Langley to Sanders, and then west on Burgess Road to where the sidewalk starts that the FDOT put in on Burgess Road is exactly a mile. So we're talking about a street that is within 1 mile of a school that a lot of children walk down to get to school. They have to stand in a ditch to catch a school bus. And so the county put sidewalks in on Sanders Street, which I never thought I'd live to see that. So now we have that, at least that part of the route to the school, children can walk on a sidewalk. Now we need to finish Burgess Road. The county has offered to give $350,000 to put sidewalks on their portion of Burgess Road. We, the city, through the mayor's office, had the Office of Sustainability work with the county to apply for a Safe Route to School grant, which would have accomplished that. And it also would have put sidewalks on Lanier.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that grant did not materialize. I don't know if there are any plans to.
Ms. Myers, let me just interrupt here for a minute. You've stated the reason you don't want to support the millage rate, and that's a valid point. You have every right to make that, but we can't turn this into an argument about sidewalks. That's, you know, that's for another discussion. Yes, sir.
And that's where I was headed. Thank you, Mr. President. That's where I was headed, because I think that we talk a lot about connectivity to schools, parks, and other public and highly used facilities. But that's where I was headed, to begin some negotiation with the three bodies, the city, the county, and the Escambia School District. So if they can come together, and if from the pots of money that would be available, the school district, the county, and the city of Pensacola, I think we might be able to solve your problem as a part of connectivity and providing a safe place for students to wait for the buses and to walk to school. It's absurd that they're waiting in a ditch for the bus.
Yeah, and let's bring that up under new business.
Yes, sir. We can do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, please vote. And that passes on an 8-1 vote. Thank you. All right, I ask that items K and L be withheld. I got a call today, and I just want to be clear on this, is that Mr. Franklin Kimbrough was not speaking on behalf of the DIB because the DIB board has not spoken officially yet. But he was asking for us to delay any consideration of these two particular items, and there's one on the committee of the whole as well that also applicable. He talked about that it was a great thing for City Council to start approving the uses of the rights-of-way to help increase pedestrian traffic and the attractiveness of downtown Pensacola. But he said it's really just gotten almost out of hand. And the concerns are not necessarily aesthetic, but he would like for either the city or the DIB to come up with language that is very specific on how those rights-of-way can be used. There was one buzzword that he used in there that really triggered me to want to go ahead and comply with his request. I know these are only for 90 days, but once you give it for 90 days, then it's hard to go back and not approve it, was the ADA issue. He said that because of our lack of clear guidelines on how those rights-of-way can be used, that we've got some compliance issues regarding the ADA. And he said in the last year, there's been 37 new businesses added to downtown. And he said it's really got the potential for it to get completely out of control. So I'm not going to be a strong advocate one way or the other, but I promised him that I would hold these items up tonight so that we could take a separate vote and allow people a chance to comment on them. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I just wanted to remind council that, as I said in the committee of the whole, regardless of the action that council has taken on these particular items, we are well on our way to addressing those issues, and we'll be bringing something within that 90-day period. And I just didn't want to lose sight of that. I've already talked with Ms. Morris on this issue. The staff has been working on it for some time. Mr. Kimbrough outlined some very good issues in his letter, and so we're, regardless again of the action, staff is on it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Dr. Wu.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As I said Monday, the attempt is to tell these folks not to have tables and chairs on Palafox. And I think I made the statement, if you get in your car and drive from one end of Palafox to the other, you see tables and chairs from one end to the other. The thing that troubles me about this, what we're doing is not that it's not needed, not I don't think it should be done in the future. But when you take somebody that's invested in the business and put a lot of money into remodeling and everything, and then all of a sudden when they're getting ready to open, say you can't do this, to me, something's wrong. So I'm going to support this action. because, and again, as Mr. Reynolds said, we're looking at the future. I have no problem with strict regulations on anybody that comes after, but to tell these people at this stage no troubles. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. I want to, first of all, I'm certainly appreciate you pulling the items, Mr. President, but what I hope that we can accomplish is provide what I would call, I guess, safe harbor, Mr. President, for business owners, investors that do expect to utilize these right-of-way areas for the service of their product and for the enjoyment of their customers. We're approaching some of the best, believe it or not. I know it's hot right now, but we're approaching one of those nice shoulder seasons in our area, and it's a time when we want these patrons to be able to enjoy the outdoors. I want to make sure that our staff, and I guess through the representation of Mr. Reynolds, recognizes that time is of the essence, and if we are going to postpone the execution of these license to use, or LTUs, which typically have been done on 12-month intervals, then we need to again act swiftly. And I know that we've got some people that have invested that are in the audience that don't want to think that they have been unnecessarily put in suspense, but I am in full support of pressing the pause button, or, as I stated in the committee meeting, is to create a finite number of days right now, a much smaller or shorter period of time for these license to use users until we get the regulations more finite for the betterment of the consensual use of both pedestrians, non-customers, and the customers.
Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. If, for those that, this is a question for the attorney, for those that already have the right to use, if we come in and change our policies, are they grandfathered in under the existing policies?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would defer to not defer to Ms. Morris, but if she has any input,
Mr. Reynolds?
I'll hear her reaction.
Ms. Morris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Council President, members of council. The license to use agreement process, the Land Development Code section that pertains to it is extremely vague. It just says that people may request permission to use the right-of-way. It doesn't list the types of uses, duration. It's very broad. The actual agreements that are executed, however, are annually renewed, but it's not where they're all renewable at the same time period. It's based on when they were executed. So annually, all over the calendar, they come up for renewal. So they do expire, and I believe that we would have to look at the legalities involved, but when those agreements expire, the basis for renewal could be compliance with the new ordinance, I would imagine.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Ms. Myers?
I think Councilwoman DeWeese may have had her light on before I did.
Okay, Ms. DeWeese.
Thank you, Ms. Myers, and thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate you asking that last question, because I, too, was contacted by Mr. Kimbrough, but also read the email that I think we all received from one of the business owners. And, the people that want to do business in our city can only count on the rules and the processes that we have in place. And as I said on Monday, I don't think we should be penalizing the 3 businesses that have asked for a license to use the sidewalk because we want to make changes. Just like with the tattoo parlor, you can't retroactively go change things, and although that law does not apply to this, one of the owners made a very good point in that go ahead and approve her, and then she will be subject to the new guidelines. Ms. Morris said that they are all staggered throughout the year, but within a year's time, everyone would be compliant with the new rules because they have a one-year agreement with the city. So instead of holding these, I think if we, in good faith, are going to apply the rules that were in place when these businesses bought properties, refurbished them, and came to us with this in mind, we didn't have a critical mass in this land use that we said absolutely this many tables and chairs and then it's over. So that's not even in place for us to rely on and refer back to. I feel that everyone that's asking for this privilege followed the rules and did what they were supposed to, and I would urge us to go ahead and approve these three without the 90-day caveat, and they will know that we are trying to rework this. I know the DIB has been diligently working with the mayor's office to correct this issue and to possibly have a new structure to the license to use. So I would support taking action tonight and supporting all three of these businesses having their annual license to use.
You've certainly convinced me. Ms. Myers.
Well, I think I would like to ask Ms. Morris a couple of questions, if you don't mind. The license to use agreements that we have with these businesses, they paid for those, right?
Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Myers, they pay initially it's considered more of a minor use to have tables and chairs. That's a $500 fee. They pay that in advance when they apply, and then they pay that again annually when they renew.
Well, I think you may have some contractual issues here but if you look, when I look at the proposals that Mr. Kimbrough has made, I can't see where they would interfere with anyone's right to have tables and chairs outside. I think that the city, that our first obligation to the citizens is health and safety. And the government can take a lot of action to protect the health and safety of citizens. These sidewalks actually belong to all citizens. We paid for them, every citizen paid for them, continues to pay for them, and there are problems that have developed. A business, even if they were indoors, have to have an accessible path of travel that meets the requirements of the ADA. So if they've got to have it indoors, they have to have it outdoors. We have got to have a safe, accessible path of travel of 48 inches, not just for people who use wheelchairs, but for pedestrians. And this is a health and safety issue. A lot of older people have mobility impairments and don't feel safe having to navigate through chairs and tables that are all over the place. So, and then the condition of the sidewalk, the cleanliness issue. So I think that there's some very legitimate issues, but we're not talking about taking away anybody's license. What we're talking about is regulating our sidewalks. And it doesn't interfere or take away their use just because we regulate it. But I think we have the absolute right to protect the health and safety of city residents who come to the downtown area. And so I'm not in favor of giving these three businesses a year license, but I may consider it if we put language in there that they understand that they have to comply with any new regulations and guidelines. But I agree with Councilman Spencer. I think that we need to look at an ordinance and codes that regulate this activity as soon as possible. And in fact, I was going to bring it up under new business and see if we could get a proposed ordinance in place at the next committee of the whole. Because I do think that there are some real issues there, and I love to eat outdoors. I'm an outdoors person. I'd rather be outdoors than indoors. And so I love the idea of outdoor seating, but also I like to walk down the street. You know,
Okay.
I want to do both.
Let's wrap it up here, please.
So I'm not going to support giving them a year.
Okay.
I'll support 90 days.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Geralds?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm going to support the items on the agenda simply because there are two reasons. One, Mr. Reynolds has indicated that he is going to be working on a new procedure or a new ordinance or something that will guide us. And two, that 90-day period would give all of us an additional time, the 90 days, to evaluate the impact. It will also give citizens an opportunity to weigh in. So before we decide or negotiate whether to do it or not do it, let Mr. Reynolds do what he said he's going to do, and he can gather that information and input from the citizens so that when an ordinance or whatever comes before us, we can review it and make a decision on it more intelligently. So I'm going to support the items on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if we could get a little clarification. I recall in looking at the existing license to use that was in our agenda, that was the one that was requested to be transferred. It had that the city could unilaterally terminate contracts, license to uses with a 90-day notice. And I was wondering if that is something that, and I think it is, that the mayor can do unilaterally. It doesn't have to come to council for him to go ahead and give all of these businesses a 90-day warning that it would be terminated. I was just wondering if we could get clarification on that.
Mr. Reynolds?
The answer to the question is I don't know. Ms. Morris, I don't know about you.
There is language, there's a termination clause that's boilerplate in all of these agreements. I believe the wording just says the city has the ability to terminate with 90 days notice without cause. I'm not sure under the new charter. We haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't executed that authority in recent memory, so I don't know how that would play out from a functional standpoint, but it's in every agreement we execute.
And I would say it's a license, it's a property right. I think that has to come to council.
Oh, does it? Okay.
And I was just conversing with Mr. Messer. It's a property interest.
Okay, because I guess one of the things I was wondering, I was sort of playing this out in my head, that if we gave them a year, I'm not up on property rights, but I was thinking, well, ultimately the mayor could turn around tomorrow and say, okay, you get a 90-day. But I will support the 90-day warning. I mean, it's something that isn't a change from what we've had already, because we've always had that 90-day warning. We're just doing it at the beginning. We're giving them a 90-day warning. And so I think that it will give us time to reevaluate. While, we could put up with anything for a year, if we can avoid having to, wait through till next summer, then we might as well get these under the new policies as soon as we can, and have them all come up in 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer?
Thank you. I fully support the 90-day basically window of time right now, and suggest that everyone understand that in dollars and cents, if an annual license to use currently cost an applicant $500 a year, this is a $123.28 cost. I would think that any of these applicants right now, they would be offered a prorated charge, and should be, I might add, instead of $500. And I also want to point out, in my opinion, these businesses Unlike Alfresco, where the entire business model relies on the outdoor dining experience. That entire investment in that project has everything to do with providing those products and the services in the, basically, the outdoors. These users, and I just have to share in terms of my history of being involved as an architect in redevelopment, the burden of the cost and the business model very much relies on what happens inside that building. I don't think that by postponing someone's understanding perhaps or administration use of the sidewalks, and as Councilwoman Myers pointed out, a public right-of-way, until we have that better regulated, I do not think we are in any way jeopardizing the success of these businesses. And I look forward to it, to a speedy development of these guidelines. I participated very actively in the workshop, and I think the people that these applicants will be there. We need to hear them. And one of the things we mentioned was that we would be able to establish the requirement to post for every establishment a table and chair layout, that as they may have management turnover, which is inevitable, they have a permanent record of how that public right-of-way must be configured to maintain the safety and basically the ADA compliance. There's some practical things that we can work out.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Abston. I apologize about you having to wait so long, sir.
That's all right. Joe Abston, 49 South Jefferson. I am a business owner and resident of downtown. I live over Hopjacks. I own Hopjacks and also the Tin Cow, which is one of the parcels in question, the 102 and 104 South Palafox. What I'm looking for the council to do is to press forward with the established guidelines that are there so that we don't lose out on these shoulder seasons that are very important to the business. Mr. Spencer was correct in saying that the business inside dictates the profit. It is not the only center of profit for a business. And unlike books, restaurants are quite often judged by their cover. So when you look at a vibrant downtown, you look at a vibrant sidewalk that has a bustling cafe feel to it mixed in with retail, you have that more inviting scenario. You are looking at the process that's currently on the books should take care of the ADA compliance. All restaurants should be ADA compliant inside and outside. So really what we're trying to debate here is not the ADA compliance, it's the footprint, I guess we could say, of that. But all of those things, the major points that Councilman Myers is pressing is the ADA ability to access not just the restaurants and the cafes, but the sidewalks and the public use. Those should be in place with the standard guidelines that we already have. So delaying this would only hinder the shoulder season for restaurants that really need them. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And this question is for staff, Mr. President, and that is when we transfer a license such as this to for the Tin Cow and World of Beer, does the clock start again on the year, or is the whatever's been used in that year license that's been granted to these businesses, is it just the remaining of that year?
Councilman Johnson, I believe we typically have executed a new agreement with the new business owner in their name, and the clock starts again on that execution date. Previously, it would have been with the former business, which may have been actually out of sync with the annual approval in some cases. So when they are transferred, we typically it starts the clock over with the new business.
Starts the clock over, okay, that's what I was trying to establish. So because I was wanting to make sure that it was clear that we're not going to, they don't have a license for a year, and 6 months has already passed since that. So that was important to me also. And you know, it's kind of like the chicken ordinance before us later on. You know, it's just tightening some of this stuff up, and it's not trying to hinder you know, the businesses down there. We're just trying to make sure that the sidewalks are open for all, and that it's more regulated. On a recent trip to Chicago, I noticed that some outdoor seating is more regulated than we seem to have. They have petitions that keep the seating close to the building. Therefore, folks in wheelchairs and other people are able to use the sidewalk. So we're not trying to stop this. I love outdoor seating. I support it, and hope that we can work together to keep these businesses successful and to keep outdoor seating. But I think that we need to tighten it up a little bit, and that's where I'm kind of going. I enjoy Hop Jacks, and I hadn't enjoyed World of Beer there, but I'm hoping to get there maybe later tonight. But anyhow, I just think that the 90 days is reasonable, and we'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dorothy Dubuisson.
Thank you, Council. Dorothy Dubuisson, 1308 North Barcelona. As you know, I attend a lot of meetings, so I was there when the DIB spoke about it. I was there when we had the public workshop where a number of people showed up and we talked about issues regarding this. And it did seem to be the consensus of the community that they love outdoor seating, but that there is perhaps such an explosion that has happened that we do need to revisit the standards. I believe that what you have before you tonight gives us that opportunity. I do believe if someone is in violation of the state code or the federal code for ADA, that they can immediately be called into compliance. I believe that is in the agreement as well. Isn't that correct? If they are failing to comply with the terms, then they can immediately
Mr. Council President, members of council, Ms. Dubuisson, what they typically, when we receive these requests, the city engineer and public works directors, they do comment on the amount of space that is required. Actually, they exceed it, and they typically ask that a corridor of 6 feet in most cases be maintained for pedestrian access. So that's typically built into our recommendations. So
right.
It's incorporated.
And should a restaurant not be doing it, though, then they would lose their right to you.
The only problem we have with enforcement typically is that customers can move tables and chairs very easily. So what may be out of compliance when one person goes by may be corrected when our code enforcement officers visit.
So I would encourage you to go on and approve the 90-day, because that does seem to be a good compromise for us to get the standards in place. And just to weigh in on whether the mayor could arbitrarily do it, I believe since you are the granting body giving the permission, that it should come back to you for
And the city attorney's already said that. Thank you. Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I was just going to repeat myself because as it was just stated, we don't know what Mr. Reynolds is going to bring back. We need an opportunity to look at that, and I'm convinced that the 90-day period will give us all additional time to look at the situation, review what Mr. Reynolds brings forward, and then make a decision. So I'm going to call the question.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. No need to call the question. We have nobody else wishing to speak. Please vote. All right, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. And that, by the way, people, was for K and L. That was, I had lumped those together. Community Maritime Park Memorandum of Understanding, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to tell the council and all listening that I did pass on this to the CMPA board yesterday, that our support of Mr. Studer's development proposal, and it was well received. We actually received a visit from the mayor. Came down and said that things seem to be moving forward on this. It was just a very positive statement by the mayor, and we do appreciate that. I think there's just some very limited details that need to be worked out on the percentage, on the term of lease, land lease, etc. So it seems to be that this project's moving forward. I can't express to this council and the public how much I support this and want to get this moving forward. I believe we have till right around the 1st of September to reach an agreement with Mr. Studer, and I think that we're headed in the right direction. As I informed Council on Monday, I had made some inquiries on the process, and I'm still a little bit fuzzy on that. I was talking to our city attorney about that, and another issue that came forward to me about this is when we talk about the city, I believe the master lease was drawn before the new form of government, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit later about what the city actually means. But I did want to tell the council that I did pass this on, and it was well received. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Please vote. That passes unanimously. Dr. Pratt absent for the vote. The next item, 12, is the committee report. These are the ones that did not make it onto the consent agenda from the Committee of the Whole meeting on July 16th. And the first item, A, ordinance amending sections 4-2-1, 4-2-3, 4-2-4, 4-2-5, and repeal of section 4-2-6, parents B, limited practice of urban farming and the raising of chickens. That motion that City Council consider those proposed amendments is requested by several citizens who support the concept of urban farming. That motion passed 8-1. Councilmember Townsend dissenting. What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Myers.
Well, I think that this ordinance is a vast improvement over the ordinance we presently have in place that allows unlimited number of chickens and roosters. There's no regulation other than that you can have an unlimited number as long as they're 50 feet from a structure. So what this ordinance does is it greatly limits the number of chickens you can have to 2 and eliminates roosters. It allows for free roaming and also allows people to more realistically have chickens and regulates how they do that. So I think it's a vast improvement. So I urge council to vote for it, to approve it.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll make it quick. Yeah, I just want to make sure the public understands that chickens are allowed today. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, talking about an issue before us earlier, that this is just tightening this up. Right now, folks can have unlimited chickens. They can have roosters. What we're doing is we're limiting that to 8 and no roosters. So there's kind of a misunderstanding out there in the public that this body before you is going to vote to allow chickens. Chickens are allowed today, so we're just tightening that ordinance up. I just want to make that very clear, and I support the comments that Councilwoman Myers made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please vote. And that passes on an 8-1 vote. Councilman Townsend dissenting. Item B, award of master agreement for engineering services for airport improvements. That City Council approved the award of contracts to Atkins North America, Inc. and Hatchmont McDonald, Florida, LLC for professional engineering services related to airport improvements at Pensacola International Airport for a term of 5 years. That motion passed 6-1. Councilmember Johnson dissenting and Councilmembers Hall and Gerald's absent for the vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Please vote. And that passes 8-1. Mr. Johnson dissenting. Item C, award of continuing contracts. RFQ number 12-027, 3-year contract for landscape architect services for various projects. That City Council award 3-year contracts with an option for 2 1-year renewals to the list of qualified landscape architect firms and authorize the mayor to execute contracts in order to have a pool of qualified firms for design and consultation for landscape projects on an as-needed basis. The motion passed 7-1. Councilmember Pratt dissenting and Councilmember Gerald's absent for the vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I first saw this on our agenda, I thought, oh, good, we're going to start implementing some of these MGT pre-disparity recommendations, which one of the ones that seemed very positive and was to create a pool of qualified firms and then have a rotation process. And that's designed so that you don't just keep going back to the same old firms that you might know for historical reasons or other reasons. Unfortunately, that's not the plan here. And currently, the administration has the opportunity to spend money that's been appropriated without coming to council, except in cases of construction and professional services of that nature. But looking a little further into it, there are price limits that once you that only comes into play once you've reached a certain price threshold. And so I'd asked the city administrator if we have many landscape contracts which reach that price threshold, and his explanation was pretty much not, that it would really not come into play in the future. There might be some, but it's rare. And so, as I understand it, then there's no need for the council to approve this, and we're not increasing, working towards the disparity goals or other things, and so we would just be ratifying this list, which we don't need to ratify, and ratifying in that process the use of firms without any ordering, which could lead to using firms you're familiar with because they're the ones you're familiar with, or other things. And I think that I would encourage the council to not ratify this. The mayor already knows which these firms are, and he already has the option to use them. And so there's, as I understand it, not a pressing need for the council to approve this, other than to approve what the mayor might have already been doing himself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please vote. Okay, that passes 5-2. Ms. Myers and Dr. Pratt dissenting. Thank you. Item D, request for license to use 321 South Palafox. That City Council approve the Planning Board recommendation regarding the request for a license to use a portion of the Palafox Place right-of-way for the placement of out-swinging doors, planters, and including outdoor seating adjacent to property located at 321 South Palafox for a period of 90 days. The motion passed 6-1. Councilmember Pratt dissenting, Councilmembers Hall and Gerald's absent for the vote. What's your pleasure?
Move for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I have two citizens that would like to address this. Ms. Deborah Dunlap.
Good evening, Council. First, I apologize for my casual appearance, but I welcomed this opportunity to get up off the floor, laying flooring in yet another loft that I'm creating downtown. I know that many of you have been in Adonis Bakery, and you know how you have to walk up the little walkway to get to that front door. I was required to do that by ADA. At London W1 at 120 South Palafox, I was required, in order to have an outswing door, that I inset that door. There are a couple of others in that stretch of buildings that I own where it wasn't even a question that I could get the city to let me swing the door out. It wasn't a change of use. It wasn't a restaurant where you would have high occupancy. But I was required by the building code and the ADA compliance, most importantly, to give a specific width and depth for that door to open. And if you'll think about it, and by the way, let me redress just a moment. I'm very proud of you for voting for the 90-day LTU. I want to see more use of the sidewalk like that. It's so charming. And no, I did not plant the plants because the umbrellas were green at the Leisure Club. It just happened to be the same color. But it gives us a vibrancy. But there are so many little details that we have been overlooking and overlooking and overlooking. And now we know that the vibrancy that we are seeing is being picked up by people who want to get a part of the action. But think about this. Our buildings on Palafox, if you go to rent them, they'll go from anywhere from $15 a square foot to $25 a square foot, some of them triple net, some of them all inclusive. We are giving away the sidewalks at $500 a piece. And some people are doubling their occupancy and their business model by us giving them $500 worth of sidewalk. But when we're talking about a license to use to open a door out, you're doing that forever. You're going to let that person change that building so that that door swings out onto a public sidewalk, thereby forever impeding the flow of pedestrian traffic. I would ask you to consider that the building architect could have easily chosen to make an entry like we were forced to do and it wasn't Adonna's when I was forced to do that. It was actually my office. We had 5 employees and I was forced to do that, and that was not that many years ago. The other thing is, you know, it all comes back to what are we using this sidewalk for? If a person needs a bigger building, they should have bought a bigger building. Why are we giving away our sidewalks? We've got more people downtown than ever before. And it's not because somebody decided to open a bar last night. It's because there are so many people in this town that have invested in downtown when nobody else wanted it. And we have spent 20 years trying to improve these buildings one by one, and we're doing it. And thank God people are taking notice of it now. But we cannot give away the farm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunlap. Mr. Reynolds, I'd like for Ms. Myers, if you give me permission, have her come down and address the concerns Ms. Dunlap had. I'm sorry, Ms. Morris.
Ms.
Yes.
Morris, but certainly, Mr. President, but I can also tell you that part of what we're going to be looking at is the fee structure as well.
Okay.
So just, Ms. Morris.
Council President Hall, I can't address the issue with the door. That's a building code issue that Mr. Weeks, that's his call typically, whether or not a door has to be alcoved or if there is some other solution for egress to let it swing out over the right-of-way. As for the fee structure, as Mr. Reynolds said, we're going to be looking at that as well. Right now, we just have a flat fee structure,
Okay.
500 for minor and 1,000 for a permanent encroachment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reynolds, could you have Mr. Weeks contact Ms. Dunlap and just give her an explanation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dunlap. Ms. Myers.
I'm going to have a problem supporting this, not because of the 90 days, but I have a problem without swinging doors and planters. And I would really, the thing that concerns me the most is the outswinging doors and the planters. I don't feel that outswinging doors are safe for pedestrians, and I have concerns about planters that are on sidewalks because that could be a barrier to people who are visually impaired. I tried to look at sidewalks in the context of the Federal Highway Administration's guidelines on accessible sidewalks, and planters and sidewalks concern me. And since I have not seen any architectural drawings or renderings as to how the door is going to swing out, how big the door is, how much space it would take, where the planters will be, I believe I won't be able to support this for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. I want to point out that the local building official and in charge, in this case Mr. Weeks, does have the opportunity to exercise his discretion on several different building code issues, and there has not been a uniform application over the past maybe 20 years. It has varied depending on certain plans, reviewers, and points of authority. But I will say, when Jackson's was under construction, or I was involved in the redevelopment of that building, my construction permit was withheld for a period of 30 days in order to allow the city council to hear that request for an outswinging door to be allowed on East Zaragoza. And so the construction permit was withheld until I was granted, at the time, the use of the right-of-way for that outswinging door. Now, I think that the building department, particularly Mr. Weeks, is very much trying to be supportive of business growth and does not see that as a hindrance. But in this case, this person is facing exactly what I was facing in developing Jackson's. I do think that we, over the 90-day period, Mr. President, can come up with, again, some of these guidelines that would help perhaps Councilwoman Myers address her concerns about safety. I think some of the nuances or the details of life safety code that most council members won't realize is that buildings reach a certain square footage capacity. They are identified for occupancy type, and this, in many cases, assembly, a restaurant would be an example of a building that has a higher, especially a bar, higher number of people per square foot, and they are going to easily and quickly reach the requirement that those doors have to be outswinging in order to provide for the safest, swiftest means of egress should there be a fire. So in many cases, especially in a restaurant use or bar, we will see the necessity for the requirement for outswinging doors, and there will be cities all over the country that are faced with those outswinging doors coming out into a public right-of-way. The next step is, how can we safely not only address the occupant egress, but the pedestrians, and that's what I think this 90-day period will allow us to do. But so I also think that because the previous action taken by this council, which involves nearby properties, providing for them that same 90-day window of time, I think it would be very difficult to not support that same 90-day provision for this applicant.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Townsend. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I did just have one question because of Ms. Myers' concern, and I went ahead and pulled up the action and the request from this owner, and it actually talked about the outswinging doors and the planters being 3 feet, and then another 6 feet to the edge of the request that's being made, but an additional 10 feet to the roadway. So that actually would probably take care of the concern that Ms. Myers had. But it just dawned on me, and I know we can't go back and change these other two, but the point that was made about the 90-day cancellation that Dr. Pratt brought up, that's actually a boilerplate portion of every license to use. And for us to come back and redundantly say, okay, yes, we're only giving this to you for 90 days, logically, we could just approve this, knowing that we're going to amend and, go ahead and allow for the year-long, and when that situation is taken care of, address it at that point.
Ms. Patty Sonnen.
Good evening, President, council members. I have a few questions. You've covered most of them already. The 90 days. We have, on that particular property, the 90 days would cover the swinging open of the doors as well as the outdoor seating. The prior ones that we just had, they only covered the outdoor seating. So my question to you is this. In 90 days, am I going to have to come back and stand in front of you and ask you to allow me to open my doors? Because that's the problem. I need an annual to be able to at least proceed with my business, with the construction, to put more money into the business, to create business for downtown. On a 90 days, I'm not sure what's going to happen in 90 days. So that means I'm back here in 90 days again, requesting permission to open my doors. As far as the planters go, the planters were recommended to us by building, so that when the doors swing open, they don't people don't see the door swinging open. So the planter would be there to warn the people you can't walk there, because that door could possibly swing open and hit you. So the planter is placed there so that it avoids that. So that's to answer your question, Ms. Myers. That's why that is there. The other question I had was, I think those were really my basic questions. And also, yeah, that was really my basic question, because I think you guys have pretty much covered everything else at this point. If you have any questions, I'm welcome to ask them. Good.
Mr. Spencer.
I would like to address our speaker. I think she's made an excellent point about the doors. The doors are they become a very expensive permanent fixture attached to the building, and as much as Deborah Dunlap must feel like she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and didn't have the opportunity to perhaps push for that use of right-of-way for out-swinging doors. Again, I fully support any sort of adjustment at this time to a motion that allows our applicant here the assurance, provides her assurance that she's not going to be having to have basically a business that can't operate because her doors can't open in 90 days. But, and then I think the other issues regarding tables, seating, how those are differentiated from public right-of-ways, I think that can all be handled, but that's a very important point.
Please don't go away just yet. For city attorney, I need a recommendation from you on how to best handle what Mr. Spencer has just said. I don't know if we need to sever the out-swinging door from the rest of the motion and then under new business perhaps pick that up and go ahead and approve it, or can we amend this particular item in a way that would allow for the permanent fixture of the out-swinging door without in attaching it to the right to use the right-of-way?
In response to your question, I think the answer is yes. However, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, and my recommendation would be and I think this is consistent with what Councilman Spencer's reasoning was, to approve it for a year in the face of what we've already done tonight, and we'll revisit it when the regulations are revised.
Well, it's just going to be my recommendation to council is that we sever the out-swinging door from the rest of this request, and then immediately after we take that vote is move to allow that out-swinging door. And because it wouldn't be just for a year, it'd be a permanent solution, because you're talking about how expensive it is. Certainly. We've got 5 other council members that want to speak
Okay,
to it.
I apologize for taking up more.
And I ask council to waive the rules and allow Mr. Spencer to speak for the 3rd time.
Okay, I too appreciate our attorney keeping us all out of jail, but I think he misunderstood me on this one. I do support severing the door issue from the tables and seating. I think that's, if that's possible, that's how I hope that we can handle it.
Yes, sir.
Right, yes, in response, I agree. Maybe, it's getting late in the afternoon and I'm not as articulate as I usually am. But of course, I think however we're phrasing it, I think this person should have the opportunity to have an assurance that her doors are going to be open through the course of her business.
And I have to, every year, those out-swinging doors at Jackson's are part of the license to use on a annual renewal basis.
Yeah, and my opinion contemplated that. I guess what I'm saying is let's resolve that issue, whether we sever it or include it in the main motion. I agree.
Okay. I don't remember who turned on their lights first. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to comment that the license to use agreement is actually rather interesting because we do have the 90-day severance that, all those balconies on Palafox, out-swinging doors, lots of permanent structures are still subject to our 90-day whim almost. And I would like to give you the assurance that we will support the doors. I think it makes it cleaner to keep it all together. And though I would say that based on the comments raised about the ADA, it might be good to get with Ms. Myers and Mr. Weeks just to double check on the ADA issue. But you would have to have faith that council from here on into perpetuity will honor the built structure, and that the issues that are going to be looked at really are about the seating. So I think it's just cleaner to keep it together because there's a standard license, but you'll be in the boat with all of those other nice balconies that if we decide we don't want anything on the sidewalk, we would force them to tear it out, and I don't think we'd ever do that. Thank you.
If I may say something quickly.
Very quickly.
On that note, most of those have been there, so that all they come in and they just do renewals, which go to Sherry Morris, I believe, Sherry? Do they? They don't have to come back here, do they? The renewals. Sorry.
And I'll clarify as she walks that even then, as we discussed tonight, we as a council, if we decide we don't like those, if we have an ADA problem with the balconies, we could have a vote next month to make them tear it out.
Yeah,
So that's my
correct.
understanding.
Yes.
Mr. Council President, if I could respond to that question.
Sure, certainly.
Currently, the renewal process is performed through our Treasury Department. They send out the annual bills for renewal, and as long as there haven't been any complaints and no reason to terminate the license to use, and they remain in good standing with payment and insurance, then that doesn't come back to me unless it's transferred to another business.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because that would mean in 90 days I have to come back here to get this license made permanent as such for a year. So we'd have to come back and go through this whole process again. Is that what we would have to do?
I don't believe that's the case. Once we approve this tonight, all you'll be dealing with is city staff.
Is city staff. We
Yeah,
wouldn't have
that
to go through all this
You won't
again.
have to repeat that. And whether we sever this or not, I just knew you were uncomfortable, and I wanted you to give some assurance before
Thank
you
you.
invest the money.
Well, that's the big thing. so yes.
But I'm positive that just wouldn't happen anytime soon. But I was just trying to give you a level of comfort.
Okay. I would also just quickly like to address the,
Well,
there's that 48 inches. We actually have 8 feet on the outside of ours.
Okay,
for that.
that's fine. We got
That's good.
several
Thank
people
you.
to speak here.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And, I rode by and looked at this property, and I noticed there are some pillars out there that divide some type of barrier there if those doors swing out. And I do support somehow separating this, the comments that Councilman Spencer made and also President Hall made about trying to separate this and to assure our business owner, our small business owner here in downtown, that the swinging doors. I don't have a problem with the planters. I don't have a problem with. There are pillars out there that exist right now that are a barrier for wheelchairs, and it appears that from what the lady just said, that there's 48 inches, actually quite a bit more than that, between those pillars that exist today and the street. So I would support separating that and give assurances to this business owner that we're not going to come back and pull the license on those out swinging doors. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know which order the lights came on, so I'm going to just start down here, Dr. Wu.
I'll make it fast. I just say ditto what Councilman Johnson just said.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I was just wondering if the planters are a permanent fixture. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. DeWeese.
Please clear my light. Thank you.
Okay. We have no more comments, and so if we don't amend the motion to sever that, we'll just vote on it as is. And I don't see anybody rising to make that amendment, so please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And ma'am, I tell you, I don't control everything that happens here at City Hall, despite what some people tend to think. And but I cannot imagine anybody reversing the decision on that door. Okay, thank you. Dr. Wu.
Yes, I can't remember the proprietor's name. There's a transcript of every meeting, and also every meeting's recorded. So you've heard us go on record talking about wanting to protect you. So even though it hadn't been a formal motion and action taken, you've heard the sentiments of all the people here, and you can pull it up at any time on the internet.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now that concludes that committee of the whole report. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The clerk reminded me that she came earlier and said that Dr. Wu's vote did not register on 12C. So we need to do that vote over again. 12C was landscaping contracts. Please vote. Okay, and that passes 6-2. Ms. DeWeese absent for the vote. Thank you. Now that concludes our report from the Committee of the Whole from this past Monday. We had a special Committee of the Whole meeting on the 20th, Tuesday, and so it has to do with airport minimum standards. The recommendation was that City Council adopt modified minimum standards for services and activities at Pensacola International Airport. The motion passed 6-0. Council members Johnson, Pratt, and Spencer absent for that vote. Now, I just ask that certainly everybody has got the right to speak to this issue again, and I know there's an interested party. I've got a card here from Mr. Hutchins desiring to speak. And but we spent 3 hours on this the other day, and so I don't want us to get into re-debating the issue. Mr. Hutchins.
We need a motion and a second.
Yeah, we need a
Mr.
motion.
President.
I'm sorry.
Move for approval.
Okay. We have a second. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Gerald.
Okay, Mr. Gerald, yes. Welcome, Mr. Hutchins.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and Council, and I understand I have 4 minutes, not 3 hours.
Okay.
Ms. Crawford, our airport director, presented a chart Tuesday and made 2 statements about Bruce Bennett and Pensacola Aviation that I'd like to go into one more time. Ms. Crawford told us that her chart led her to the conclusion that Pensacola Aviation has been priced higher than FBOs in the area, and that we had only reduced our prices lately given the possibility of competition on the airport from Mr. McQueen and his company, Innisfree. She also told us that when she heard Bruce say it was fun to have a flight department and that we were losing money in the flight department, she concluded that we were overcharging customers on fuel to amuse ourselves with our flight department. And that's when she realized she had to get a competitor in here. I'll be sending each of you another graph, hopefully next week. It won't change anything here tonight, but as we go forward, I want each of you to have it in case you want to look back and rethink what happened there and compare the graph I'll supply you with her graph and the conclusion that she reached. And I'll ask y'all to decide if the airports that I put on there as data are appropriate to compare to Pensacola. Our fuel pricing on AirNav or any other internet site has so far and is not today in any way related to anything that Mr. McQueen might or might not get approval to do. If he opens up and charges lower prices to try to gain market share, at that time we might respond by adjusting our prices due to Mr. McQueen and his company. Bruce has run Pensacola as his father did before him, feeling obligated to offer safe, quality services, even when those services didn't necessarily make the company any money and in a lot of cases lose us money. Most good FBOs have felt a responsibility to promote general aviation in the community. His comment that it was fun to have a flight department was one of many comments that he made to Ms. Crawford during our meeting. His intent was to point out that with all the negatives and problems we faced with the flight department, we could still say something good about it. Her conclusion was that if we had been making money in the flight department, apparently we would have charged less for fuel. In my opinion, Ms. Crawford misunderstood Bruce and mischaracterized his remarks and came to an erroneous conclusion that then very much motivated her desire to change the standards to facilitate a competitor coming onto the airport. I want to talk about helicopters for a moment now. Our side of the airport, as we understand it from airport staff, is restricted to helicopter traffic. We can't have it over there. The helicopters are on the other side of the airport where the HeliWorks ramp is right now. They can have helicopters, no fixed wing. So our question would be, if that ramp is leased by Mr. McQueen and Innisfree, will it still be restricted to helicopters, rotor wing only? HeliWorks is planning to spend its own money to build a 96,000 square foot building on the FBO site number 2, just south of us, we understand. They'll be using their own money. Will they be permitted to land helicopters over there on that side of the airport after all? And if they can, right next door to us, will we be able to? If Mr. McQueen leases the HeliWorks ramp where helicopters are now approved to operate, is the airport going to completely close Pensacola Aviation off from the ability to do any kind of business with helicopters? Yet give Mr. McQueen helicopters on one ramp and fixed wing traffic over on the corporate ramp where he has his facility. We think there's a problem there that should have been explained to us or gone through for us. I did get a copy of the settlement agreement with the neighborhood, and there are some complications on how that second site has to be developed. But HeliWorks is apparently going to be able to get something done, so I think the airport could make land available for Mr. McQueen to meet the present standards. He could build on the second site and meet the standards to compete with us, but he wouldn't get to use the place he already has.
Just one moment.
Yes, sir.
If, with council's permission, I'd like to waive the rules and extend another minute to Mr. Hutchins.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I'm about the last paragraph. I'm sorry. You could negotiate with the neighborhood, I think, and get their cooperation. Where you stand on an issue like this does depend on where you sit. And I understand Mr. McQueen's interest in having what he wants at the airport. From where we sit, this has been very much about helping him do that. He wants to get a better return on the investment that he already has, and we don't blame him for trying to do that. He's not a bad guy, and we understand what he wants and why he wants that. Going back to my comments about Bruce, we were a little shocked by the airport's characterization of us and our situation and what we think and what we do about our pricing and how we operate. So y'all are going to vote the way you're going to vote tonight, and but I wanted you to be aware one more time that you'll be voting with still some legitimate issues hanging that we think really ought to be worked out before these particular standards are put into place. And I appreciate you letting me talk too long.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Ms. Deweese.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I wanted to thank Mr. Hudgens for coming back down tonight and trying to clarify some of the issues. I did take the time to forward the document I had referred to Ms. Crawford and had a enlightening discussion with her today, and also talked about our proceedings on Monday. I want to say how much I honor the commitment of Mr. Hutchins and the Bennett family for all the years that they've been here. I also want to honor Mr. McQueen for looking at his business that he has developed and trying to find a way to exist in the current economic environment. It was very painful to watch the deterioration of the relationship with PAC and the airport, and I hope over time that both parties can come together and work that out, and that the two parties that will be operating under this new environment can also work together. You're all great people, and council was put in a really tough position, and as Ms. Dubuisson pointed out so wisely, that PAC is in the phase of more of an appeal to this process, and I fully expect that you'll follow up on that. And I just hope we can all move forward and see our city grow. We have a beautiful airport out there, and I'm glad that you're both a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, I will have to recuse myself from voting on this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Seeing no more comments, please vote. Okay, and that passes unanimously, 8-0, Mr. Spencer dissenting. I just need a couple of, abstaining, I'm sorry. Yeah, abstaining. At this point, I'm going to have to ask you guys patience and let me consult with the Vice President of the Council. I'm going to have to leave, and I just want to do a couple of housekeeping things. We're not actually in recess, but okay, you got CRA, and then here, remember under new business, Sherry had some stuff that she wanted to bring up to do a sidewalk, village rates.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is CRA. Isn't it?
Yes, it is. All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The report for the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting that occurred July 16th, 2012. We had the approval of the June 11th, 2012 CRA board meeting minutes. And the board report then included the consideration of amendments to economic development agreement with disposition of property between the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Pensacola and Hicksart Technologies Incorporated. I know that at my last CRA report, Mr. President asked me to provide more detail in that report. I'm asking your permission to just read basically the items, and if you would like the full motion read, I can do that.
Just read the what you've been doing.
All right. As I said, the first item on the agenda was the approval of the previous CRA board meeting minutes. A motion was made to approve. That motion carried 7-0 with board members DeWeese and Johnson absent. The next item was, as I said, the consideration of amendments to the economic development agreement with disposition of property between Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Pensacola and Hicksart Technologies. A motion was made. The motion passed 6-2 with board members Hall and Wu dissenting and board member DeWeese abstaining. The final item addressed 16 Palafox Place lease amendments, particularly allowing for the sale and on-site consumption of liquor, but not including the package sale of liquor, and that motion passed unanimously. That concludes my report for the Community Redevelopment Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item is ordinance on the first reading.
Item 14A is proposed ordinance number 18-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance amending sections 4-2-1, 4-2-3, 4-2-4, and 4-2-5, and repealing section 4-2-6, B of the Code of the City of Pensacola, Florida, providing protection for animals, providing regulations for keeping poultry and other fowl, providing for severability, repealing clause, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Move the second. Clerk, please vote. It's 6, 5-1. Who's absent from the vote?
You're absent.
You-
You're voting to
No,
Sam.
did I vote?
You want me to push your button?
Oh, I voted for Sam.
Yeah, if you push Sam, you want me to?
Okay. Yeah, I voted for Sam.
How do you?
Hit vote.
She can change it.
You can affect his popularity index.
Okay, we need to redo the vote.
No, sir, just was tested.
Okay. Do we need to redo it? No. Okay. Item 14B.
Item 14B is proposed ordinance number 19-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance amending section 6-2-1 of the Code of the City of Pensacola, Florida, providing for the establishment, composition, compensation, terms of office, vacancies of the Parks and Recreation Board, providing for severability, repealing clause, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Unanimously. Item 14C.
Item 14C is proposed ordinance number 20-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance creating sections 14-1-291 through 14-1-320 of the Code of the City of Pensacola, Florida, establishing green building requirements, guidelines and incentives, providing for severability, a repealing clause, and providing an effective date.
What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
Please vote. Order is on the second reading, item 15A.
Item 15A is proposed ordinance number 15-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance amending section 10-4-19G of the Code of the City of Pensacola entitled Schedule of Rates and Charges, providing for severability, repealing clause, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Move the second. Please vote. Item 15B.
Item 15B is proposed ordinance number 16-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance incorporating a certain area contiguous and adjacent to the City of Pensacola and to the City of Pensacola, and declaring said area to be a part of the City of Pensacola, repealing clause and providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Item 15C.
Item 15C is proposed ordinance number 17-12, an ordinance to be entitled, an ordinance incorporating a certain area contiguous and adjacent to the City of Pensacola and to the City of Pensacola, and declaring said area to be a part of the City of Pensacola, repealing clause and providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote.
Ms. Myers?
You're not lighting up, Sharon.
What do you want me to do?
Vote.
I just did.
Resolution, item 16A.
Item Item 16A is resolution number 25-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution to declare official intent with respect to the reimbursement of capital expenditures incurred in connection with certain public improvements with proceeds of the city's tax-exempt bonds, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Item 16B.
Item 16B is resolution number 26-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution authorizing and making revisions and appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012, providing for an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Item 16C.
Item 16C is resolution number 27-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution authorizing and making revisions and appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012, providing for an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Item 16D.
Item 16D is resolution number 28-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution authorizing and making revisions and appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2012, providing for an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Please vote. Next item is unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Councilwoman Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President, or Vice President. I had heard from Mayor Zimmerman of Gulf Breeze recently about the ongoing dispute about natural gas, and I thought that our last action on that issue was to try and encourage staff to work together towards a resolution, probably in the absence of attorneys, and my understanding is new attorneys have gotten into the mix, and I was just wondering if we could get clarification or if there's any need to clarify what our intent was.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Councilwoman Pratt, maybe I didn't send an email out, maybe I had a senior moment. I thought I sent an email to council. The mediation's been scheduled for September the 26th.
Okay. I might not have seen it today if it was.
No, sorry about that. but
Okay.
that-
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
I
thank you.
think the last will of council was to go to mediation. And in the interim, we're trying to work out an agreement, so we'll
All right.
see.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Johnson.
Yes, I was under new business. I apologize. I hit my button a little premature.
Okay, I'll get with you. Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Just very quickly on the golf cart matter, it dawned on me after I went home that the citizens that are requesting it in East Hill, that's a rather large neighborhood, and the citizens of my district that I know to use them are Cordova Park and Bay Cliff Estates, which is an enormous neighborhood. I know it from walking it during my campaign. And I wanted to ask if staff, when they are considering this, and I'll get with the supporters that have been coming to council, that if we do it for neighborhoods and we do it as their neighborhood association, they all have existing neighborhood associations, and if it's much like a golf cart community for a golf course, some of the rules that they've put in place, if we do it for contiguous neighborhoods, instead of trying to have this colossal effort that was contemplated on Monday, that it just seems almost overwhelming to try to accomplish, that maybe if we approach it from the smaller level, we might be able to get somewhere with it, and that would keep them off the major roads as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's my opinion that most likely that would be the only way that they could consider it. Those neighborhoods that have distinct peculiarities very well might can do it. So, Mr. Reynolds, you have any comments regarding what?
Just really quickly, Mr. Vice President, this body was unable to come to any decision on this particular issue, and staff, as I had stated at the committee of the whole meeting, had already spent a considerable amount of time on it, and at this point, it is not the intent of staff to spend any more time on this issue, absent this body coming to some decision on the matter.
Well, possibility that if in fact some desires of a neighborhood that we could maybe direct something toward peculiarities of neighborhoods in that regard, do you think that we could come up with something in that respect?
With all due respect to this body, if this body can come to an agreement on what it is they're looking for, staff will be more than happy to once again address this issue. But the issue that happened at the committee of the whole meeting on Monday is that there was no decision from this body. And because of that, I can't justify the use of staff anymore on the issue. Now, if this body wants to vote and can agree on what it is they want done, then absolutely, we can move forward. But as has been pointed out previously tonight, you're talking about a staff that has frankly been, in some departments, they're wearing many, many hats. And I have a responsibility to them to ensure that we don't unnecessarily and unproductively use their time. But again, this body, if it can come to an agreement what it's looking for, I don't have an issue with that.
Could we possibly put this back on our next committee as a whole to discuss it? I guess where I'm coming from, if there's a bunch of citizens out there who are desirous of having something and then it's not causing to cause an adverse impact on anyone, and if we could accommodate it, we possibly should make an attempt. I really don't recall specifically that we washed our hands on it all the way. Monday, I may be wrong. I don't know. I don't even recall what action we did take on it.
Well, there was no action taken, Mr. Vice President, and as I stated at the time during the meeting, because that there wasn't any action taken by this body, then I could not devote more staff time to addressing the issue when I don't have any idea what the body wants.
Understand. So, if there's an agreement, we'll put this on as the next item for discussion at
Yes,
our committee as a whole. That'll be a council action. Okay.
Mr. Vice
Ms.
President?
Myers?
Well, I wanted to speak under new business. Are we on new business
No,
now?
we're not on new business.
Okay.
Councilmember Wu?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. I think the fact that we didn't vote to put it forward was an indication where we were. To put it back on and have us debate it again, I don't know necessarily will change anything. What I was going to say earlier, though, was I appreciate Councilwoman DeWeese bringing forward what folks have asked her to do. My only dilemma in okaying it for one or two neighborhoods is then you get into the question of why not my neighborhood, his neighborhood, somebody else. I think it puts us in a very precarious position, and we can say there's one or two special neighborhoods and we can let them do it, but then the rest of the folks cannot. So, but I'm personally not in favor of going back to the issue since we've already discussed it on many occasions, although I may easily be overruled. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Councilmember Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And pretty much that's where I am. If there is a state statute that allows it, the people are already doing it, apparently with success. Why are we tampering with it? Will our rules supersede the state statute and give them other opportunities?
The state statute doesn't allow it.
Well,
does it not?
Why don't,
the state statute doesn't.
If we can hold this conversation to the committee as a whole, I hope that my comments regarding that we'll discuss it at the committee as a whole and try to bring it out again, so we won't have to, deal with that anymore if y'all would be in accord with that.
Okay, let me know when that meeting is going to be held.
I won't discuss the item itself, but I would I would respectfully request that often we will hold a vote on whether we're willing to have it back on the committee of the whole, and so I think that might be in order to vote on it as opposed to just generically put it on.
Thank you so much. Could we take a vote on whether we would like to have this back on committee as a whole?
I'll make a motion for the purpose of voting on it.
Second.
All in favor?
Can I clarify?
Thank you so very much.
Next item.
Next item. Louise, I thought you wanted to.
Listen, can I?
Next item.
Councilman Johnson, you.
New business. Yes, sir. Thank
No,
you.
we don't have got the,
Can I just finish? Yes. I'd like to restate under unfinished business. I will take this issue to CNAP, the Committee for Neighborhood Association Presidents, discuss this thought I have with them, and clarify for Dr. Wu that it would not be by exclusion any neighborhood, it would be by their interest. So active neighborhood associations, if they wanted to petition it, but that they express the interest and we find a way through this and have this proposal be brought back to the mayor and to council and find our way through it instead of having another protracted discussion at our next committee of the whole. That's why I voted no. I'm willing to go on behalf of council and talk more with the presidents of neighborhood associations and see what their thoughts are.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. New business? Councilman Johnson?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Yes, I was wondering if we could get some information on the Restore Act funds that are going to be, looks like, coming to Escambia County soon. I had, yesterday at the CMPA meeting, it came up that from Carter Merrill, the chair of the CMPA, that there are some worthwhile projects, not only in the city of Pensacola, but over at the park across the street, that being the removal of pilings that are there, possibly the building of a pier, that there are some projects that are worthy across the street, and that I was just wondering if we could get some information. I had also emailed the mayor last week if I could head up the efforts with Restore Act funds, compiling the list of projects that this council and even the CMPA that is on their wish list per se, to get those projects lined up as far as needs, wants, desires from the council and also CMPA. I was denied that spot, or at least I'm still waiting on a response. In the meantime, I had heard that there was a Restore Act meeting today in Fort Walton Beach, and I'm getting that secondhand. So I'd like to get some information, if I could, Mr. Vice President, on who is heading up the effort for projects for Restore Act funds that will come to, it looks like that we are going to be able to get some funding, and I think those funds are handed to Escambia County. And I'm just wanting to get more information on the process. Who will be the point person? Chairman Merrill, we had about a 5-minute discussion about it last night, and he didn't know who's heading that up for that effort for the city of Pensacola. And I'm just trying to get more information on where we're at on that, because sometimes we become reactive, and I want to be proactive on that, and I would like to hear from staff, Mr. Vice President, and I don't relinquish my spot yet. I would like to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Councilman Johnson, for the question. It's interesting as we look at the actual Restore Act and Florida's place in that act as opposed to all of our neighbors. In every other case, there are actually outlined in the legislation either who's going to be members of councils to determine what happens with this money, and in some cases actually saying the mayor of X will have a seat at the table, or the 2 county commissioners from county Y will have a seat at the table. In Florida, it says the county, period. Which is striking as someone who used to review legislation and write legislation when I was actually a part of the Senate. you have pages and pages and pages outlining for every other state what their process is, and for the state of Florida, you have, I think it's a paragraph, it's literally about, I don't know, 5 or 6 lines. We don't have a by right seat at the table. The individual that's heading up our efforts is Mayor Hayward. Mayor Hayward went to that meeting today that you had mentioned earlier. He will certainly continue to make sure that the city's projects, the city's desires to be a part of this process are known. I do know that at the last Board of the County Commission, the Board of County Commissions meeting, Mr. Oliver brought forward some proposals, but they were all essentially focused on what the county was going to do. And so at this point, I guess the short of it is that we don't know really how much voice, if any, we're going to have. So, you know, but that is why it's very important that the mayor, as the chief executive officer, be a part of this process, and he is committed to being that for the city and ensuring that we are heard on the issues and that our projects are known.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And Councilman Spencer, myself, and I believe one other city councilman was present about 10 days ago at the briefing that Senator Nelson gave, and I spoke up for the city and for our citizens and said that we want a spot at that table and that we want to be included in those funds. And I think that it's very important for this city council to recognize that those funds are coming down maybe sooner than later. It was spoke about in federal court in New Orleans that there might be an out-of-court agreement, and that could happen in just a few months. So I'm hoping that the mayor and his staff will be proactive in this, and we need to start thinking about projects that are worthy of these funds, not in the city of Pensacola. And I think that we should encourage our our county commissioners that we have a seat at that table, and that our projects in the city of Pensacola, which I remind everyone, the city of Pensacola is in Escambia County, that the projects that this council, that the mayor's office, that even the CMPA for that matter, that we deem worthy, that they make sure that they're not lost in the process, and that we have a seat. So I'd like to make a motion tonight that at our next committee of the whole meeting that we have some type of update by mayor's staff of where we're at, the projects that are being looked at and that have been identified as worthy. I'd like to make a motion that we have some type of information item presented at the next committee of the whole of what those projects are, and get some type of briefing on where we're at on that.
Second.
Move in second. Please vote. Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Myers?
Yes, I have a couple of, actually 4 things I want to bring up quickly. We've already discussed having the East Side Neighborhood Association placed on the agenda for our next CAL meeting.
What was that?
The East Side Neighborhood Association to address the issues that were brought up. One of the issues is setting up a East Side Neighborhood Board that would be a city council function, and getting an update on the expenditure of funds. That's one of the things they requested, so I'd like to put them on the agenda. So I'll make a motion that we put the East Side Neighborhood Association on the agenda for discussion at the next committee of the whole.
Second.
Move in second. Please vote.
Okay, the next issue. I attended the Maritime Park Board of Trustees meeting the other day, and as you all may be aware, I don't know if you are or not, but I've been going to those board meetings since 2006. I have rarely missed a board meeting. I go to a lot of the subcommittee meetings. And I have taken a great deal of interest in this park. And I feel that the city council should have a point person involved in the negotiation of the lease with Mr. Studer, because ultimately it's my understanding that that lease agreement will ultimately come to the city council for approval. I know that Mr. Johnson has asked to be the point person on the negotiation team, which is Merrill Collier and staff, and I can't remember who else was on it. And I don't know if Councilman Johnson is still interested in that, but I think it is very important that we have a city council member involved on that negotiation effort. Mr. Johnson is on the CMPA, and remember that the CMPA is an instrumentality of the city, and that we appoint all of the board members. So I'm going to make a motion that Mr. Johnson act on behalf of the city council as a point person in negotiating that lease agreement with Mr. Studer.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Please vote. Question?
May I make a comment? I just wanted to ask, one of my concerns, nothing against Councilman Johnson, but if he and Mr. Merrill are both on it, it's a sunshine problem. And so I think that the intent is good. I don't know that we can have both of them together, but I think there's merit to having a council member. I'll throw out a name. I was thinking that Councilwoman DeWeese, with her mortgage background, would know that, but she's free to deny it. But I'm safe because I'm already on the board too. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Myers. I'm honored that you would consider me for that, and I would like very much to represent the City Council and the City of Pensacola in these negotiations. What I would do if this motion passes is I would ask Chairman Merrill to make these public negotiations and in the sunshine, advertised, so that we can be transparent. We talk about transparency in this city, and I'm all about transparency, and I don't mind negotiating in the open. It was discussed yesterday at the CMPA meeting that we could just hammer it out right then, and that would have been fine with me too. I think we're real close. I have no problem negotiating publicly with Mr. Studer, with Mr. Merrill there present, and noticing these meetings to make sure that they're in the sunshine. I would prefer that, to be honest. And if that's unacceptable, then I will consider resigning from the CMPA so that I will not violate sunshine in these negotiations. Thank you so much, Ms. Myers, for thinking of me.
Mr. Townsend.
Okay.
Mr. Vice President?
Councilman Wu? Yes.
If I may. The mayor also is heading up the negotiations with Mr. Studer on this issue. We are very close to reaching an agreement. And frankly, if you're going to have a council member involved in that process, that could cause complications, especially since that document has to come before council itself. That's why you have a chief executive, is to take care of these issues. That's why you have staff to support that chief executive. The mayor, and as Mr. Studer said in the CMPA meeting yesterday, he thinks that the mayor is the individual he's negotiating with, and he wants it to be that way. So I think that this body needs to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Councilman Wu?
Yes, my remarks are on the Restore Act, which we talked about 10 minutes ago. And as much as I like Councilman Johnson, in light of what the administrator just said, it puts me in an awkward position on what to do. So, thank you, Mr. President. But I would like to say just a few words on the Restore Act at the very end.
Councilman Suspension?
No, I have something new.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anybody else on this subject?
Well, I'm not through. I find it just unacceptable and unbelievable, quite frankly, that the mayor is the person primarily, or his office, negotiating this agreement. There is a thing called the omnibus lease agreement, and it was decided at the CMPA that the CMPA is tasked under that lease agreement with negotiating this contract. It does not have to go to the mayor's office. You can't find that any place, anywhere in that agreement. It will come to the city council, and it is absolutely appropriate for the city council, and we appoint all of the members to that CMPA. It is an instrumentality of the city, and we have the absolute right to appoint one of our members who we placed on the CMPA to be involved in that negotiation process. And you know what? If it's negotiated with the mayor, it won't be in the sunshine. But let me tell you what Mr. Studer said, and I'm very proud of Mr. Studer. He wants it in the sunshine. He said you can televise these negotiations if you want to. That's fine with me. Mr. Studer wants them in the sunshine. He said he wanted them in the sunshine, and in the sunshine they shall be. And I urge you, please support having a council member involved in these negotiations. I can't help it if the mayor wants to do this behind closed doors. No. The citizens voted for this. This is our park, our project. In the sunshine, it must be. Please vote to put Mr. Johnson in that position, and then it will be in the sunshine, and we'll know what's going on. And Mr. Studer's in favor of that. He's on record as saying, videotape it if you want to. So I've called the question.
Second.
Mr. Reynolds, you have comments, Mr. Reynolds?
Yes, sir. It's this us versus them mentality sometimes that permeates this organization. The chief executive of the city is Mayor Hayward. Mayor Hayward has been involved in the negotiations with Mr. Studer. He will continue to be. The ultimate document comes before this body for approval. If you don't like what's in the document, then you reject what's in the document. But the chief executive of this city is Mayor Hayward.
I call the question.
The question been called. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please vote.
In favor of calling the question is first vote, right?
Yes, in favor of calling the question.
Right. Oh, I'm on. My light's on.
I got to vote on the question.
Vote on calling the question.
Okay, all in favor of calling for the question, please vote. Okay, going back to the motion. All in favor of the motion, please vote.
Point of order, even though we've called the question, if someone in the audience wants to speak
Do
to
we have
the issue,
anyone
we
in the
decided
audience?
we have to allow them to speak.
No anybody on
I think Ms. Dugasant wanted to say.
Dottie Dubuisson, 1308 North Barcelona.
Just speak up a little, please.
I'm sorry. I'm not an attorney, and I don't have the copy of the ombudsman agreement, but I believe yesterday there was quite a bit of discussion about the relationship of who shall be the agent. And the term was the city. It did not say the mayor. It said the city shall be the agent for negotiating the lease. And I consider you folks to be the governing body who would be making a determination. So I can appreciate the fact that having one of you sitting on there to be able to bring the terms in agreement with what you folks maybe in advance would discuss would make some sense. The fact that Mr. Merrill sat and negotiated without the board giving him exact terms and authorizing it was a little bit cart before horse, I thought, but they did, after the fact, appoint him last night or yesterday to be the representative. And I believe the same thing is true here. I believe you folks can say, we have these possibilities, this is what we'd like to see in there, and have your representative, your agent, go and make those representations. The mayor has not come to ask you folks in advance what terms you want in your contract. So I'm believing that you could have a negotiation that goes through, and then you come back here and you folks say, we don't want the terms. And so we're back to step one. So I believe what is being proposed might actually make sense to have a council person representing the thoughts of you folks to the negotiation table, because you are the people we put in charge of making the agreement. I respect the mayor. I believe he has a lot of good stuff that he can bring to the excitement and the development and the pleasurable experiences that we're all looking for, but you folks are the ones who have been sitting there making these decisions about the CMPA on a regular basis, and I would encourage you to look at what terms, at least, if you're not going to have one of your people in there doing it, then at least give him some terms that you are saying these are our bottom lines. I believe where they are right now, there are a couple of percentage differences, and there was the length of term. They can go up to 55 years, and they're somewhere between 45 and 55, and it's like 8% versus 10% or something. You know, none of us were given the details. They just threw that out. And Mr. Studer was standing there saying, let's hammer it out right now. He was ready for the board to do it. So the stalling and the behind the doors and the fact that we have to take it to the mayor so that he gets to make the decision and gets to come back to you folks. And at that point, you know, if it's gone 2 degrees different than what you wanted, we're back to square one. So I would really ask you to consider Ms. Meyer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote. Okay, it passes.
Okay.
You have one other item.
Well, actually, I have 2, but they're real quick.
You told me 3 at first, now you jumped.
I think this is already on there, but I wanted to make sure that the DIB standards that they're talking about get put on the agenda, because we're trying to fast track that.
I think they...
Okay, so the third thing, y'all are gonna love this.
Wait a minute, hold it.
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds, you have something to say?
Yes, sir. Understand that these standards won't come directly here. They have to be passed as part of the Land Development Code.
Right.
So that's why it's going to take us, it will take us at least 60 days, but...
Can you give us an update?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about the DIB issue?
Yeah,
Listen,
DIB.
The staff already has that, I believe.
They're going to give us an update on that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I, now my very last thing. Y'all are going to love this.
I'm scared.
Okay. Now, you all know we appoint the CMPA board, and I have said before when you, Councilman Johnson and Councilman Spencer tried to get me on that CMPA board. Well, now I have an opportunity to be on the CMPA board because Mr. Spencer has resigned. So I would like to be the council's representative on the CMPA board.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Call the question.
Second.
Second.
Please vote.
On the question.
On the question.
Okay, then we vote.
Okay, now please vote.
Again?
I said I'd never be on that thing.
Okay, that's your message. Okay, Mr. Louise, Councilwoman Louise? No,
sir.
we take the Sunday lights out. How about turn them all off, and then folks who like to speak, would you please hit them again on the new business? Councilman Spencer.
All right, thank you. Mine's not nearly as dramatic as Councilwoman Meyer's last one, but I've had some occurrences, some preceding serving on council, and some now that I've been on council, where there have been some incidents of significant tree or landscaping trimming that occurs, certainly in the spirit of creating unobstructed sight lines, seems to be the recurring theme. But generally, the people that are on the receiving end of that, those that aren't the drivers through the neighborhoods, but those that are the owners of the property, that perhaps those the vegetation's on their property, they're the ones that seem the most certainly shocked when they come home and find that there's been some alteration that they just had no anticipation whatsoever was going to happen that day or that week. So I think we've got an opportunity to minimize emotional shock in terms of notifying people, and I just want to propose that we allow staff through our city administrator, Mr. Reynolds, to consider, does he meet with Public Works, whatever, but there hopefully can be a method where there is a card, something's placed on someone's front door, the affected neighbors, that says, this week we plan on perhaps addressing this. If there's an opportunity for those residents to have a meeting or just be forewarned, number one. Number two, I think it would be advantageous if we can create some level of consistency, and maybe it already exists and I'm unaware of it, regarding what a licensed arborist would do and recommend as it relates to dealing with these different plant types. I offer the city hall maybe, or can be the venue where we can have some educational seminars for residents, but at the same time ensure that we've got someone or a consultant on staff that clearly knows how you properly take care of limbing up and doing some things that otherwise right now might not be doing as best as they can be done.
You got that, Mr.
I think so, but if I don't, I can clarify with Councilman Spencer later.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's the phone calls that we get from people that are upset that they just weren't notified and brought into the process that I'm trying to minimize.
And I understand that, Councilman, and a lot of times I deal with similar phone calls, and 98% of the time it actually comes back to Gulf Power. But I understand what you're saying, and we'll take a look at it.
Thank you. I have one item, and I think most of you received an email from the owner of One Broken Egg regarding the blue law, and I don't know whether anybody responded to that or not. If so, did you, or the city? I'm just wondering whether, Mr. Reynolds, did you guys receive something from the owner of Broken Egg about the blue law?
We did, sir, and boy, if I believe I answered it, I'm almost positive I answered it, and I can forward it to you, but I can't remember if I actually answered it or if I just thought about answering it, but I'll find out and forward it to everybody tomorrow. But I talked about it and simply said that, you know, it is a council issue. The council can make a determination, but I think I also warned them that that would probably be a pretty hot button issue. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you will forward that, and then council can make a determination.
I will do that, and I'm almost 98% sure I answered it.
Thank you.
But, yeah.
We have a couple of citizens who would like to speak. Reverend Monk.
Earlier this evening, I had hoped to have the opportunity to address the mayor in his absence. I'll address his chair. I'm excited with the developments that Pensacola has been making over the last few years, and I am hopeful that the new branding will continue to advance what Pensacola has already done. I'd like to state that I have been a major advocate of the advancement of Pensacola, sometimes advocating things that people would find contradictory, such as my immense advocacy of the Maritime Park, and even involving myself in helping relocate a homeless encampment off of there to be able to help facilitate that, but doing it in a humane and disciplined way. And what concerns me with the title rebranding is that it can sometimes be a euphemism for gentrification. And there are some genuine problems in our city that need to be addressed, and so what I had hoped to recommend to the mayor is that a committee of citizens be put together either under the mayor or under the council that would allow for some oversight to make sure that gentrification does not take place, to make sure that diversity remains in the forefront of our community. Diversity is what makes people come here now, and diversity is what will make people continue to come here in the future. And so I hope that identity does not become lost in the rebranding as we move forward as a city. However, that being said, as sometimes is typical, I come to address one issue and another issue arises itself. Sam Hall, when the incident happened all those months ago, I came here tonight with a buried hatchet. I came here not to address the council, but to address the mayor and his seat in his absence, as I said before. I have no problems with Bill Reynolds as a person. He and I, as far as I know, seem to get along and have a very jovial conversations outside of council, and I don't see why I should be penalized for the lack of vocabulary of the council president. And so the term that Sam Hall used all those months ago was mea culpa. And it's a term I'm very familiar with as a priest. It comes from the original Latin Tridentine Mass, or the Mass of St. Gregory the Great, meaning my bad, my fault, I've done wrong. So it comes from the great contrition moment in the liturgy. Contrition implies repentance. Repentance implies that one is willing to turn away from, to make a complete 180. As I have watched council meetings from the safety of my home, I have not seen a 180, but a 360. I experienced that tonight. I came here to address an issue, and a prejudgment was made upon where I was going. And that's what happened before. I'd like to remind this council that I never requested an apology. I never requested that Sam be removed. But I'd also like to remind this council